Hello, for gaming community and Beyblade community as a whole. We had a few audio issues with recording this podcast, but I'm getting it sorted out, engineering it now. So we're going to kick it off with our very, very special guest. Hope you enjoy it. And our special guest is Zenki. If you don't know of Zenki and you're part of the Beyblade community, I don't really know how. He's a big, I think, when I spoke with your dad, you're the second biggest Beytuber, right? I think right after Beyblade Geeks? I'm not sure. I thought you were the
Maybe
biggest. But
second, third. I don't know.
yeah. Either way, he's way up there. He's a big Beytuber. He's coming out of Canada from the Canadian scene. Definitely a big part of the community. So hello and welcome. You want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am Jose Lemos. My YouTube channel is Zenki. I have been doing Beyblade for over 10 years. Well, now it's going to be like 12, over 12 years. I fell in love with it, and I've been doing videos ever since.
Nice. Let me ask you this first. It's a request from most people. How did you get the name Zankye?
All right, the backstory to the name. So, back in the day, my dad had a surfing career, and he had the nickname for that. And I think the channel was like for something else, but at the age, I was like, I want to try a YouTube channel. We already had the channel set up, so it was just used for that. Although I will always enjoy, I have friends that don't really know the stuff that I do, but they'll just always shorten my name to Zank because the full name is kind of confused. I will admit, if you read it normally, the spelling, it would probably say Zankye. Not Ke, but it's one of the perks to the name, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So it's originally your dad's surfer name from his surfer channel.
Oh no, it didn't have. Well, it didn't have a channel. It was a nickname that he had. But yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool. That's pretty dope. All right. Kick off the first question that we have is I guess second question now. But how did you get involved in Beyblade? You said you've been involved with it for 12 years, and how old are you now?
That is technically not disclosed. So.
Oh, okay. I won't.
Feel free to guess. Feel free to guess. I started in 2010, so this was when Metal Fusion started around, and I think this was like when episode 3 or whenever Dark Wolf appeared in the anime. But I had a friend tell me, you should check out this show called Beyblade, and I was like, oh, what's that? Watched it on like YTV, and I was like really hooked to it. And the stores were like sold out like crazy. Like the only 3 bays that I got were, funny enough, it was like Dark Wolf, Dark Bull, and Dark Asher. There's no stadiums, no Pegasus. Like it was like insane. But 2010, whatever, I think. But only a little bit later on, when I had a few more bays and whatever, we actually got started with videos. And I think in like the first video, because we used like a really old camera, there was like a delay at the start when it would record. It would just like freeze and then it would go. But from there, moving on to like all the years onwards, it's just been going steadily, I guess.
Oh man, that's pretty dope. Up there, y'all, it's all Hasbro that you were looking for too, right?
That's when I really liked Hasbro back in the day. Metal Fight at the start, it was pretty good, I must say.
Yeah. It's the same down here. I know at least in North Carolina, like any Target, any Walmart that we go to, like any store, it's usually like ransacked for Beyblades. Like it's really hard to find them. I recently went to Target though. They did have quite a big collection, but I also live in a really small town. So sometimes like in the smaller country towns, like sometimes you get some rare finds and some nice finds, but it's quite typical to see them sold out. That's how like people play, but
yeah, exactly. The shelf life is like really important. That's also another thing too. That's kind of what determines what a lot of stuff they actually make more of or whatever. I think especially too with Burst, it's really funny because what I have noticed is that they will push a lot to the stores, and the issue is that if you look at a Canada Toys R Us, right, it has, well, not anymore because they did like a sale, whatever, finally gone, but for years upon years, we had like those like old gen 2-packs of like Burst, whatever, still stuck. We had like the minis, the singles, whatever. Or even
Yeah.
some of the Pro series. I noticed in the US, like the newest wave, not the Prime one, the one before, the Master one, dude, nobody wants it.
I think I definitely feel like it's because they're more expensive than the regular ones, and the people who would get them to compete already know what's up. You know, they're like, this is a re-release of what we already have.
I think that's also another thing, and that's also a very important thing, which is affordability, because obviously with inflation and that kind of stuff, but if you compare the prices relative to what it was in Metal Fight and you look at Burst now, like, oh boy.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
in Canada, I think Hyperblades were like $15 or something like that. Maybe 15, 20, whatever, tax, right? In Canada now, like the equivalent to that, which is Burst with Pro Series, it costs like $40. And
That's a lot of money.
you gotta be kidding me. Like, no parent is
Yeah.
gonna get that for the kid. Like, maybe for Christmas or something.
Yeah, yeah. That's highly expensive. I didn't know. I wasn't playing back in the metal or the plastics. Mike, you did. Do you remember the prices back then?
Yeah, I was gonna say when I was younger and I'd go to like Toys R Us to get a plastic bag, it was like $7, $8. That's how
I
much it
envy
cost.
that. I envy that a lot.
And now,
Yeah.
of course, I'm looking at it like, oh my god, I wish I still had all the ones I had. I used to have a lot, but then when I got older, I was like, okay, I'm done with these, and they got thrown away except for the couple I did keep, but it's not much.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy because everything. I know my son, he got into it, and I bought. I think it was around $10 or so. Like it wasn't too much, but then I had to also buy the launcher, and I wasn't as familiar with it. Like when I initially bought him, this was before I was even in Beyblade. He was just asking, and I just got him, and he lost them, so I never bought him again uh, until I went out and searching like for one Christmas to go get them, and then we got back involved into it. But they were, I guess, around the median range. But yeah, the Pro Series they're the exact same price right now as the Takara Tomy imported bays. And like I said, like if anybody's like competing, there's no point to get the Master Diabolos. I don't know what it's called in Hasbro, but it's
Devilos, yeah.
yeah, Master Devilos. If you're gonna have if you already have the Takara Tomy version, but they are still cool. Like I will admit, I did get the Poison Hydra. I don't know what it's called in Pro Series
Yeah,
because that's
Cobra.
like yeah, Cobra.
Granted,
Uh,
if GT becomes a ranked format and people
it
that are
will
new,
be nice. Yeah,
people that are new to getting in, that's where they'd be worth someone to get.
I
that's
definitely think
true.
so. And I'd also say too that there are some young toys of GT stuff that is like way cheaper than Pro and like less issues overall.
Hmm.
And like Pro, I think like in the best concept of Pro where they actually put the money in the production, right? I think it's a very good thing because for starters, when they do it right, they give the right parts for it. There's no wear. Sometimes you get some real positives with stuff. Maybe they use a newer mold and it's good for accessibility's sake because a lot of stuff if you go like a year later from now it's going to be very hard to get. Like let's
Yeah.
say they do like Brave Altriac Pro series, like it's going to be in, let's say they do stock just in case they do some random combo or whatever, right? Let's just say they do stock. It's going to be a lot cheaper than if you wanted to probably import the original Brave, and I think it's like a good idea. Just yeah, I've already said so much on Hasbro.
No, it's all right. It's all right. Yeah, speak your mind.
I
It's
just
all.
I just think Hasbro was too late to the party.
I
You
actually
know,
agree with that completely. I think if this was to really roll out, they should have done it like a year. They should have just done this during Turbo, to be honest.
Yep.
And if you see the New York Toy Fair interview that I did, you notice that when we were asking about, Switch Striker, the Japanese product, they were kind of like on the answers. And it really does suck because Switch Strike was like the original Hasbro thing. It was just the same. It was like almost one to one with the Karatomi, just with the slopes, whatever, minor stuff, right? But they
Mhm.
basically okay, well, Turbo was different, right? But they canned it, right? And the reason why they canned it was because for Pro Series, they get to mark up the price even more in quote unquote authentic Japanese, right? Even though the authenticity,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's yeah, there's definitely a lot of hidden things, I'm sure, with the production and why they did the things that they did. But I think it's and I don't know for sure, but I would definitely say that like agree with y'all, like they are a little bit late to the party, and therefore the competition is another thing I think they should invest in is possibly
actual
hosting
competitions, yeah.
events. like to get some promotions for it. But that's I don't know if they're gonna do that.
I think also it is unfortunate because of the fact that the pandemic is a thing. They're probably very limited in what they can do. That's
That's
also
very
probably
true.
why, because the last tournament, I'm using very much air quotes right now, was
Yeah.
app thing online. I'm pretty sure if there was no COVID, they would have likely, done it normally.
Hmm.
I do think though that if we were to think about it, they should have done like what was the first one? It was Chosi Valtryek, Chosi Achilles on card. If they did that during Turbo, they have
Hmm.
like not only do they have it a lot easier on themselves for like if we were to make fun of the bays because they're pretty relative and caught up, but back in Metal, by the way, Hyperblades was also on purpose. It's the same thing. Nerf bays. Oh, we got the magical marked up stuff. It's all the gimmicks you wanted, right? But they did it like the time frame was very short between the base that came out and the hype. But like if you look at like when Pro Series came out, it's like how many years ago did Turbo Valtryek come out to the Chosen
Right.
Valtryek?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, there was a. I couldn't give you an exact answer, but I know there was a significant gap.
Yeah, and if you think about it too, it's also very hard for the appeal of the stuff because they literally did like what was it, like 4 Chosi releases, and now everything is like all GT. I think because they
Hmm.
realized themselves, they're like, wait a minute, okay, well, this is
Yeah,
kind of outdated. Okay, we got to try to do catch up. And
very.
I like it. Like I like it. Don't get me wrong. If when they do it right, I think it's a very good thing. When they do it wrong, with all these things, whatever, then it's worse on the consumer because when they're getting it, it's like I really wish they could have put a little bit more to it. Because at the end of the day, if they think about it, it's like it's just good for the consumer if they want a somewhat easier to access product that's closer to what Takara Tomy has.
Hmm.
I feel like Hasbro's real issue is the fact that they're not more involved with actual tournament play. Like even before COVID, they're not like fully involved with it. That's why we have the WBO.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
also another thing to add too is that if you look at their PR statement when they say they want to connect with the community,
Yeah.
I have not seen them making it. Now, the thing is that they're trying to appeal to casuals, which there's nothing wrong with that. But they also have to remember the core audience for Beyblade at the end of the day is very surprisingly Beyblade fans, and to them, I think their biggest mistake is not connecting to the WBO, or even it doesn't have to be like some crazy relationship, but like not even trying to get more involved with the community. Like, yes, they had events at like Toys R Us, or I'm sure in the US probably maybe Target or some locations, whatever. But
We have nothing
oh, that's
that
that's
I,
that's that's
that I
amazing.
know of. I think they may have had some older stuff. Like Mike Mike may know better than me, but as far as I know, I don't
When
think we have anything.
when I was young, I could never find anything. At least down here in US, I couldn't find much for tournaments for Beyblade.
Hmm. I've
So
heard of some things happening at like Toys R Us when it was here, but Toys R Us has been gone for a while. I was devastated by that. It's childhood memories, but Toys R Us is gone, and I haven't seen anything. The most I've seen, or we've had some interviews where some of the interviewees were saying that yeah, they were at events when they were younger, but I don't even know if those were Hasbro official events or they were just local events. But yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
yeah. But it's one thing you did mention, Mike, before though is it could be good because of the like we don't know how long this hiatus is going to be in between burst and whatever new system that we get. Hopefully, we get a new system. So if they're delaying it, maybe seeing how sales go, and then once the new series comes out, maybe they may be neck and neck. But then at the same time, sales aren't really
Well,
going to reflect it right now because nobody's buying it because it's so dated.
well, Quad Drive right now
And prices
is
too.
out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well,
Price.
I think what Hasbro should have done from the get go was been more involved with hosting tournaments and everything, because then they could release the regular stuff and the Pro Series stuff so at the same time. So then what would happen? Kids parents will buy them their regular stuff and everything. They'll go play in tournaments, but then you'll get some kids and or adults that are like, well, I want to do better. They go
Mm-hmm.
buy the Pro Series stuff, and that's how you sell the Pro Series stuff. The
Yeah.
only thing is I could see them being afraid of saying, "Oh, well, they could just buy the Takara Tomy stuff, which is a year ahead of us and they could just win. Well, limit it to region. If it's not released in your region,
Yeah.
you can't use it.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. For their events.
You know,
And yeah, go ahead.
because Papa Bay, his video he just put up now that he's back, I had left a comment asking him, why he didn't use Longinus on Fafnir if there was a specific reason, and he said Longinus isn't out in my region and we're not allowed to use anything not from our
Yeah,
region.
I was gonna say because there is a big gap. For example, like Korea to Japan, like I think only recently they very much started rolling out Dynamite Battle stuff, and there's like and they're very delayed and whatever, and it's like to localize to other regions. I do imagine it is a little bit tough for them to do, and that's also why, for an example, in Korea they might use like certain bundles, like there is like a set with like Revive Phoenix and Geist Fafnir Stadium and like a level chip. It's not like a set, it's just like stuff together. Or like recently there's an Ultimate Valkyrie that okay, this is it. There's an Ultimate Valkyrie that had like a Devil Blade and like a Sparking Launcher. Like yeah, we just got it, but they like do bundles and whatever. And definitely with the other thing with other regions too, it is a big factor too. That's also why it is very important to understand the situations that are there. Sometimes, maybe they're only stuck with whatever they have, or that's also why I'm very, I think, critical to Hasbro, because I feel like they can do a better job. They've done it before. It's just,
Yeah.
I just
with the money they make from Magic the Gathering, they could put a little bit into Beyblade.
like listen. If you look at how much it costs for like a 2-pack in the US of Quad Drive, you look at how much a Pro Series Bay costs, like something's not adding up together right now.
Yeah.
I like listen, and what I said before was like a very simple solution. What they should have done is they should have just had the casual stuff, like the quad drives, the hyperspheres, whatever. Like they can have it whatever if they want to appeal to casuals, whatever. That makes sense. But they should have always had the alternative if someone wants to get like the actual thing, whether it was Switch Strike or Pro Series. An alternative is always important, because if you leave someone with only one option, it's like, well, that's what I'm stuck with. Like I wish I could have that option. And there's some people who can't afford TT, and that's their situation. It's like, well, Hasbro's their only thing. So I definitely do understand why, if there are Hasbro fans that don't like my reviews when I go into it, I do understand the anger.
Yeah. It's a complex situation. Sometimes I even think about like their licensing or what they're even allowed to do. I don't know. Because what you said with Magic, that does make a lot of sense, but I think they fully own Wizard or whatever, or that like Wizard is a part of them, versus I think they partnered with Takara Tomy. So I don't know for sure, but it could even be possibly TT holding the reins on some of the things that they're able to release. So
yeah,
I don't know, but
TT and Hasbro work together for a lot of the business decisions. That's also why, for an example, when you watch the animation for the past few years, you'll notice that there will always be a gimmicky stadium. That is actually the influence of Hasbro, right? If you notice the Turbo dub versus the sub, there are a few scenes change where they actually use the Slingshot Stadium or whatever it's called in the actual thing. And that's actually, it's a very interesting thing, but they kind of work hand in hand, especially with designs and what stuff get approved. And
okay.
Magma Ifrit.
Yeah, that's another thing too. It's the Transformers thing with Hasbro and Takara Tomy. So like, there's also Nerf with Hasbro and Takara Tomy, right? So they have like a relationship probably where they let them have stuff and they have stuff, whatever. But it's not exactly like Hasbro makes all like TT has to like approve some of this stuff, but I feel like it's more okay. Yeah, you do whatever, and they influence each other back and forth. Like I do personally believe that if Hasbro never did the Ripfire or the RC, we would have never gotten Hybrid or Ignition, because those are the perfected concept of basically like a fused disk driver.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know the correct term for it, but I appreciate that insight on it, because I never really thought about that, or I didn't even know that. But them coming up with designs and stuff like that, yeah, because Hasbro is a whole lot more gimmicky. I didn't know they had as much play or say, but it does make a whole lot of sense, because I knew there was a recent Hasbro release, and not too recent. I think it came out a couple months ago. I actually got the Beyblade because it was only released here. I can't remember. Yeah, Magma. I can't.
Ifrit.
Yeah.
Magma Ifrit. Ifrit
Yeah.
or
Yeah, Magma Ifador, and I actually went to the store and I bought it, and we did a giveaway for I think it because it came with a set.
Yeah,
But
stadium.
and that was really cool to see. You know, like not for competition purposes. I wouldn't use it to compete, but it was great on my collector side. Um, and yeah, I never really thought about that about them having as much of influence because I always thought of it like they only do what Takara Tomy tells them to do.
Right.
I didn't know they had the insight like that.
So I have the actual quote from the slides. This was from Beyblade Burst behind the scenes. So Takara Tomy develops the product line for the Asian markets. Hasbro
Hmm.
gives input on the needs and preferences of Western markets, and working together, they work for like the final product line, whatever. So they work together. And also, funny enough, when you mentioned Magma, it's a little bit of a fun fact, but that is canonically the only Hasbro Bay in the anime. It is a legitimate Hasbro Bay. That is the only. It's a cool thing if you think about it, right? Because everyone thought when they saw Magma, including me, like it was a little bit of cope, but I thought, oh wow, maybe it's a new subsystem. No, it was a Hasbro Pay the whole time.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it was, and especially too in Japan, I saw there was so much confusion with the thing because they thought TT was going to release it, and no, they did not. Actually, I think probably they also knew, so because I've seen a lot of Japanese Baytubers and other Asian Baytubers actually import the stuff, and they're so excited. And I think they're a little bit more lucky, right? Because they just have to Karatomi from the get go. So whatever Hasbro
Hmm.
does, it's more funny to them. It's like, oh, it's pretty light or whatever. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do like it, and I do think too, like it's a cool idea of a Hasbro exclusive. And I've always thought this idea that having a product that's just to them is like that's a really cool thing. I think it was
Hmm.
at their strongest with the dual layers exclusives because that's when they're pretty much neck and neck with each other. The later
Hmm.
on, like the turbo ones, okay, well, Choji Base have metal, okay. The Rise ones, okay, there's the layer weights. Well, they still look cool. And my favorite one actually is it's like an evolution. It was Shield Kerbeus and Inferno Salamander. Even if like
Yeah,
they're garbage, whatever, I don't care. Like, listen, it looks really, really cool. I think,
yeah.
and it's like it's good for like a fan, whatever. Even as a collector, he's like, oh wow, this is my favorite Bay, and like even if it never gets an evolution, at least it gets that.
Hmm. Hmm. I was happy. I was ecstatic when I got Magma. I feel like I got a few other ones, like the ones that I collect. When you're talking about exclusives, I think it will be cool if, like, because I know they had the Kuro Kuro exclusive. I know
Right,
Manny Limited, they have some exclusives that only come to Hong Kong that
right.
they have released. So we got ours. So it'd be nice to get some that are competitive, but at the same time, I still enjoy the ones that are on a collective status.
I think if they're
Um,
very smart too. Sorry to cut you off, my mistake.
no, you good, man. It's all good.
I was gonna say that for me, logically, if they could just do the QT ones or maybe some, but they should do like Pro Series Hasbro exclusives. I think like it's like the smartest decision. Not only is it technically a new release of Takara Tomy, but they can do whatever they want.
Some recolors would be nice, like some unique recolors. It would be dope.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if they made a Pro Series version of Shield Kerbeus or Salamander,
Bite in a
that would be
heartbeat. Heartbeat.
yep,
Hmm.
that would be super insane and awesome. Like especially if we end up getting the GT format turned into ranked. I mean,
Oh
even
yeah.
with it being unranked, it'd be something that you could play in it because it's a GT Bay.
Hmm.
Definitely something that makes you
100.
think. Like they could have done that over like Ace Dragon Pro Series. Like there are better options.
They
Yeah.
already did Command Dragon. Why did you even go back to do Ace?
Listen,
And
Yeah.
without Grand and Rock too. That's the worst part.
and I think to also mention this, I don't know if I've said it, but I probably said it in the videos, but I don't know if I mentioned here. It's that you have a catalog, right? So it's in a catalog, right? The newer something is, the more money it costs, right? It's like royalties or whatever, right? So that's why you're gonna
Hmm.
notice a lot of times for Pro Series, the performance tip already had a dash, mini releases. Yeah, they're like 3 years behind or whatever. 3 seasons behind, excuse me. And it's cheaper, right? But if you notice, there's like Keep or whatever, right? But there's Keep Dash, but they purposely pick Keep on purpose. Or with Judgment Joker, even if they released it later, like Ultimate Reboot, there's Ultimate Reboot Dash, Zeta Dash, right? So
Hmm.
I I feel like they give a little like I understand for Hasbro there are some things whatever like you can be like okay pandemic affected whatever okay fine I'll give some leeway but there are a lot of stuff that are definitely just cheap on their part for the choices that they make.
Yeah, yeah. I can see that. Sometimes I try to come up with excuses for them, but then
Like, listen, like for Ace Dragon Pros,
I don't
and
know.
Crisis just mentioned this. Like, Ace Dragon originally came with Grand Rock and a Dragon Winder, or was LR launcher with the Dragon Ripcord. On the Pro one, you don't get that. You just get Ace. Okay, fine. The Ace has the burst stopper mold on it, but still.
Yeah, like it. They should have put Grand Rock in it just because first off, the kids that do like the anime and are like, well, where's the rest of it? What do I do?
Even doing the same thing with the Venom Devilos thing. It's like, okay, here's your Ace,
Yeah.
or the Devilos launcher.
Yeah.
Mm.
Not even that, just like a string launcher. Like, when's
I-
the last string launcher that they released?
I mean, right? They could release grips and stuff over here now too. They could.
Yeah, but
There's a lot.
there's
There,
it doesn't make it doesn't make any sense too. It's like they could. There's the launchers they could release the grips for, or they could even have just it's for God's sake, they recycled the dual threat launcher from years ago for the Cyclone.
yeah, I saw that. We've all saw that. Yeah. It's I don't know. I don't know, man. I do hope what I would like is just like what Mike said, that they start if they get more involved with the community and start like hosting tournaments, like something big. Because the WBO is doing great, but to have that backing from a major corporation would be phenomenal. Like so many more people, and they could network it so much better. Commercials and advertisements and things like that. Because I think everybody knew about last year's as soon as they got anybody that was involved with Beyblade. That was the virtual tournament and everything like that, and that was really hyped to see. And if you're able to do a physical one, but like you said, the pandemic did set a lot of things back, so it's
And
going to take some time before we can get into anything else.
and the factor too that you have to realize as well is that they're very particular with who they want to pick with the brand, right? So I have made many, like fun little jokes, whatever, the Bay team thing, right? Now listen, the only
Mhm.
purpose of that team is just because they don't have good advertisement and they need someone to sell the product. That's why these videos, whatever, won't mention these little negativities, whatever. They're trying to push it. So for them, what I think, even if I think that logically wouldn't make any sense, they want to only have the positive opinion on the product. Like that's why for the original sponsored QD reviews, you will see them never mention anything like really negative or criticism, whatever, right? They have and it makes sense, right? Like obviously they would be controlling the message, but no influencer is going to be like, yeah, well, you know what, I had to sign something and I can't say anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's gonna lead me into my next question. I mean, you kind of answered it already a little bit earlier, but when you got involved into bay tubing or just like
Sure.
your experience with it, like what got you involved in it? Like what got you started? I know you said you started on your channel, but and how has that experience been?
So I think a big influence too, because I think I started before Beyblade Geeks, but they were definitely a big influence too, because they were a lot older than I was, and I thought it was really
Hmm.
cool. Because I thought, oh, once I grow up, that's it. But no, it's like it's a hobby that anyone can enjoy at any age, whatever. I think definitely a big motivation too was putting a lot of work in my personal life. So obviously too, like for videos, right? Unless I got a good grade, I couldn't get the new release, whatever. And it's like it's a good motivation to do videos, huh?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I think I would like to say I've built a good work ethic, and it's also thanks to the channel. Also, the channel has been good for expressing myself, and that also helps me get out of the box. Because over the years too, something that I've dealt with is a lot of social anxiety or performance anxiety. Right? I have to deal with that even if
Hmm.
I go to tournaments. I can't control it, but at least with the channel, when I do videos or I go to these WBO events or do live events, it's like it's such a good way to help and express yourself. So I do definitely owe a lot to Beyblade, even if it is just a spinning top game for like 5-year-olds.
No,
I
no.
mean,
Go ahead, Mike.
I can owe the exact same thing to Yu-Gi-Oh, so I
Yeah.
know where you're coming from.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing to say because it's a lot of us in the community. I think I've mentioned it in another podcast. It's like I get social anxiety too. And having these events and things like that. Well, first my career, like I have to be loud and proud and things like that when I do things, but I really like to keep to myself. But it helps with a lot of the kids that I see that come out to these events and they may have started off inside their shell, but when they have like a common denominator or something, which is Beyblade, to get them out and having fun. So you're doing it out in the public or something that you really enjoy, instead of just going somewhere where it's just a whole bunch of people and it's awkward. Um, you meet a lot of other people that are like you, be able to spin these tops and to play and have fun, and then you kind of warm up, and it a little bit cracks you out of your shell and things like that. So that's really great to hear, and I'm glad you had that experience.
No, yeah, no, it's been really good too. And I always, I try to do my best at events. Sometimes I'll be fine, but other times, I need like a minute or whatever, right? But I do try
Hmm.
to do my best because there's like a lot of kids, whatever, that want to say, hey, can we battle, whatever. And I try to do my best to make sure because I want to make sure everyone's like having a good time, whatever. And also trying to do, and that's also why I don't know when I started, but I did help with judging and whatever, because that's also a very important thing. And I don't mind to help out or give advice. A lot of times, maybe the parents will ask questions too, and it's just, just to make sure it's like a good environment, whatever. Just so they can know it's safe, whatever, and it's a lot of fun to do the events. Even if, I mean, for here in Canada, we haven't had too many events because we had a few lockdowns, whatever. But for the events we've had, it's been great finally coming back.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely really good. Getting out and helping in the community. How long have you been judging? Have you been judging the whole time you've been competing, or?
I'll say around GT. I'll say around GT is what I believe.
Okay.
I think I got started with Burst Railing Intro Z, and I really got involved with competitive GT, whatever, and I think late GT I finally understood. Because another thing too is that competitive is not the easiest thing to understand at first. Like, this part is good, okay, but why?
Hmm.
How does it work,
Hmm.
right? And like even for me, I will see like when I was before I even knew this, I was like, okay, that's a cool combo. I don't know how it works, but I'll use it, right? And that's also why I think it's very good too that we have these events, whatever, because it's good for casual players, and also it helps them also learn a bit more about how the bays work and everything. I think competitive is a very important core aspect to Beyblade, since it is very much based around the idea of customization and all that stuff.
It is. Mhm. To
One,
me,
go ahead.
yeah, my bad, Mike. To me, it was good, and that's what got me involved in it when I understand. That's what makes Beyblading competitive is the customization of the parts. Because it's not just, I've said this 1,000 times, but it's not just like how hard you can rip your launcher. That really doesn't matter at all. But putting these parts together, it's like scientific, and there's physics with it. There is a small scale of luck. Sometimes it just
Of course.
happens. Yeah, but for the most part, it really is the mechanics of the bays and how well you understand the parts that you're putting together.
I do
I'm done,
think,
Mike.
and I do
Oh,
think,
go.
I was gonna say, I do think too that even if you are a new player and it doesn't, well, okay, whatever the format is, let's say in context of WBO, whatever, GT eventually becomes or limited or classic or standard, right? I've seen new players that have never came to any of the events. They just said, "Hey, I watched some videos, did some research, and they did like super well in an event." And never feel discouraged going to an event, because I think anybody, doesn't matter if you're number 1, number 10, whatever, anybody, as long as you practice and you study, you can do well in an event, and maybe you eventually rank up or whatever, or just do well in the events.
Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. One key thing that I like when people finally learn it, when they start playing competitively and they learn just because it says attack on the box does not mean it's an attack
Yeah,
type.
exactly.
Yeah.
There's so many bays where TT says one type, and I don't know if it behaves like that.
Yeah. Yeah. They behave so much differently. I remember I was actually looking up some stuff last night, some of the sites that when I first got involved in competitive Beyblading, and they give these tips for the combos and things like that, or like what you should buy.
Right.
And I look back on it now with the knowledge I have now, because I mean, when it first started, that's just the things I was looking for. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, like none of this is good. It wasn't even good during the time in the era in the era that it was released in. But I think some of it was either to push sales, or people who weren't competing were just, maybe it was something that looks cool or you want to play with your friends, but it was definitely not competitive. But it's unique to see now. Yeah, you don't go by the box. You got to be creative and doing doing your own combos. But on to the competitive one. Do you have, eh, and I'll admit I haven't seen it, but do you have your regular YouTube channel and then a competitive
Yeah.
YouTube channel?
So
Okay,
I started the competitive one in like May or something, I believe. May of the
May of last.
2021. Yeah.
Okay, what? Why did you do that, or just to show?
So the mini reason was just because I wanted to have the testings there for reference. So in case I was wondering how it went and I didn't want to just do it again, I can just go watch the video. But another one too is just because so the main channel, right? You know, you have to worry about, okay, is this video going to do well, whatever. And on that channel, I can just dump whatever. And I think it's not just technically competitive. I throw in like visual effects edits, whatever. But for competitive too, like also why I'm trying to push more competitive in the videos too is that I do feel like it doesn't really get talked about. And when I say get talked about, not just okay, this is competitive. I mean like to really make the viewer like understand, right? And
Yes.
I think that's so important too. And for the videos for the testings, right, that's like a point of reference. So sometimes I'll say in a video, okay, I done this, and if you want to see in the other channel, that's like the full testing that I did for the thing, right? Or even for the
Mm-hmm.
reviews now, you know, I always try to kind of explain my thoughts, or sometimes I'll do, you know, I will admit I have not been catching up, but I do try to do a little bit of post-like thoughts in more in-depth reviews. I think it's important too because if you really look at unboxings, maybe some different, but for like the main unboxings, they're not really per se. Well, sometimes they can be. It depends if it's a repeated part or whatever, but you know, they're mostly like first impressions more than anything, right? And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times, you know, people can misjudge release completely, and that's why I've been trying to push a lot more of these videos. And it is true that competitive is very hard to market for a video if you look at something casual. Like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
I did like some joke combo of like save your Valkyrie on like Quest or something, right? Maybe that'll do
Mm-hmm.
better than like if I did like Divine Belial, best competitive combo or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think an important thing too is communicating the message because I will be honest, I don't think anyone wants to listen to like a 50-minute video of explaining the difference between Ultimate and Savior and in
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
situation. So I always try to like condense it in a way that if I'm listening to it, I try to make sure that I don't get too bored or I try to just get straight to the point. That's why I will be honest, right? I'm going to be transparent. A lot of the reviews, most of the TT ones, Hasbro ones, I have less to say because we already know. But like for the
Yeah.
reviews, they'll be like 40 minutes or something where I'm really just like going on, and I have to like condense it to like 20 or a lot less, right? Because I don't want it to be
Mm-hmm.
like dragged out or whatever. And maybe there are some things that aren't necessary, right? And I think it's important to delivering that message because I've seen a lot of people that say, hey, you know, I've seen some videos, whatever, you know, thank you for the videos. I understand it a bit more. And I think that's the goal too. It's just to get people more involved with competitive because like I said with misjudging, let's take an example of a stock combo, which is like the original release combo, like Judgment Joker. If
Mm-hmm.
everybody judged Judgment Joker on the stock combo, I don't think anybody would use it. The stock combo was pretty easy to burst.
Yeah.
Or even save your Valkyrie, right? Like no one would know how to use the Valkyrie one core to save. They would think it's like the worst release ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I really like, unless it's within the context of stock versus stock, that's one thing. Okay, fine, sure, yeah, that makes sense. But if it's you're judging stock as competitive value, that's a little bit where it's like, okay, relax, right? An example: Hollow Death Scyther is one of the worst sparking stocks I've ever seen, but
Mm-hmm.
the Hollow Ring is actually really good for attack.
It
And
is.
is just like putting the message because testing is such an important thing. And before I did it, I didn't really understand. It's like, ah, come on, someone just has to do battle a few times. What's important? And I really realized, like, yeah, it's pretty important. Like, take for an
Mm-hmm.
example, I remember when Guilty was coming out, someone saw a video where Guilty's Karma disc like broke Cyclone or whatever, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, is Karma broken? Does it need to be banned?"
Yeah.
And
I remember that.
someone did testings. What happened? Oh, it wasn't as dangerous as we thought. Take for an
Mm-hmm.
example, recently Divine Belial, the red recolor thing. Oh no, big problem? Okay, no, actually, if you look at the mold numbers and the variations, no, not really. And even a thing too that a lot of people are confused with is part wear. I feel like a lot of people don't understand this, but these wear, right? All
Mm-hmm.
of them wear.
Yes, they
The
will.
severity of how much they wear, that's what we're talking about, right? So for an example, teeth wear, right? Dynamite base have teeth wear. Yes, every single thing that has a teeth has wear. Now, how fast they wear where it becomes important. And then after, if we want to criticize, for an example, let's be fair, maybe there are some cores TT and DB that I think are very poor for their teeth design, like Valkyrie 1, because over time, if you use a dash, it will wear very quickly. There are some molds that mitigate it over time, but you know what I mean? Or like the Phoenix core has like the tiniest teeth I've ever seen, right?
Mhm.
And it's not only just testing competitive, but it's also understanding the bays themselves, because, ask yourself a simple question, how many times when people talk about, let's say, an issue with something or whatever, they actually go over this, unless if it's a disc, that's a different story. But like for parts, like the molds or whatever, it's like very much like not talked about.
Yeah, it's
Hey, sorry, there was a brief pause. We lost our audio recorder, but we got it back online, and we'll hop right back into the podcast now.
Oh, beautiful,
right.
finally.
yeah. We got Craig back.
Shut up,
He
Craig.
disappeared for a minute, and all right, I did lose my train of thought. You were
The
talking about
the topic
molds.
was on molds or whatever. So what I was saying
Yes.
was, so when I was talking about the importance of competitive whatever and kind of going on this tangent, was just the idea that with testing, it's also important because a lot of people just don't do testings and they will complain, or a lot of people will say something's a big problem, they don't prove it, they complain. But if you really look at it and you really try to do the effort of testing, you realize it does help in the long run. And also, like, even if you maybe have limited resources, that's fine. It's at least good to get the results or whatever, because the more data we have, the better it is for stuff. And like, it's just something I felt that was so important. And like, because if we never did testing, oh my god, I can already
Yeah.
imagine all the bans we would have on parts or whatever.
Yeah.
Ban drift now.
Yeah.
I'm just
There-
saying. I think all these maybe we got to ban all the stamina. Maybe it's just attack only.
Yeah.
As of right now, even though I don't have the part yet, the only part I'm scared for that might be ban worthy is that bearing drift.
So
Yeah.
the thing, the metal bearing drift thing, what was I gonna? So even though it's 300 copies, whatever, I can always assume that TT is going to do some release later on. There's no way that TT is
Right.
gonna, because they did it with Perseus, they did it with Goku, they've done it with
Solomon.
they'll do the thing where they bait it for a later release when it doesn't really matter. But I think something very smart that they did was they specifically made it a metal driver, because metal drivers are way easier to burst than regular drivers. Like,
Oh yeah, after they changed the mold cap, yeah.
well, I mean, it also does depend on the specific. Okay, yeah, okay. There's a lot more factors than just that, but generally, it is like Metal Universe to Universe, for an example, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think also it makes more sense because if you think about it, it probably would be a little bit mad if it was just a normal drive or even dash, right? Okay, in that case, I would be like, oh, okay, maybe you're making a case, but I do think TT has been very smart with their choices for the most part for how they've been handling certain releases and how they've been doing it. I think Dynamite Battle is so many steps above Sparking. I think if
Oh, it
Beyblade,
is.
if it
It's a
died
big
at
gap.
Sparking, I would have understood completely. Like, Sparking was a train wreck for me, and I can say that. Like, they designed an aspect of the idea is bursting, but they made it to where if you use this very specific double chassis, like, oh, you can't really burst now, can you? And yes, okay, fine, maybe 2S, right? But it was such a. I think what Hasbro did, if they did it better, right, which was a chassis disc, I think that would have made more sense. I don't know. Or they maybe should have done it where the doubles had way weaker burst resistance, because it just kills the fun. Like,
You don't see the stuff explode like you want to.
and that's another thing too. That's where the stigma came from, where the bays don't burst anymore. And I've noticed
Yeah.
that too, and I do understand. I do think there may be some cases where it could, but I think DB, there are definitely like many cases. I've had this happen to me recently in finals that I was using Guilty and I died because of a burst. I think it was actually because of the metal driver, actually.
You were
Yeah.
using Guilty?
I think it was Guilty Bahamut on a metal. In fairness, in fairness, I think it was a wall slam, but
Mhm.
there's stuff that goes into it, but I think DB is very fleshed out, and that's also why I think BU is very smart, because in reality, BU is just DB. There's no, it's not the ultimate whatever, it's just DB. Because the pandemic affected the production, and there have been some production errors that are actually proven, right? Like, for an example, the random boosters, I've seen the remakes have had issues with like the teeth being placed the wrong way, or like maybe like minor stuff. And there are definitely production, but that's why they've been spacing out. If you notice DB compared to Sparking compared to GT, it's less and less and less.
Yep.
And I prefer personally quality over quantity. I don't want 20 releases if it's going to have really bad issues, right? I prefer it spread out. And, it's basically just like DB, but slightly longer. And I am very much here for it. I do hope they pick good choices and whatever, right? Because for me, I do feel that they definitely need to give Attack more shine. Because Dynamite and Devil and Dangerous and Divine, right? The Belials, right? None of them are really used for Attack.
They need to give right spin attack more shine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right spin attack, yeah. Like, okay, Savior and Ultimate, okay, yeah, they're good, but nothing is on the level of Guilty. I think Guilty was a little bit too much, I think. It's like,
Yeah.
it's the heaviest blade still. Like, I think it's like an absurd amount. And yeah, it would make sense that nothing in pure attack can go against it, because something that's obviously heavier is going to have more force than the other one. That's why if you notice in like battles that like Guilty will more than likely burst a Savior or burst an Ultimate. But I definitely do think they have to consider balancing a lot of stuff, because I do think I think defense is dead for the modern burst stuff. I can't remember the last time I actually saw something that make prominence. All right, fine, prominence.
Yeah, prominence is pretty decent with defense. Yeah.
Roar is not defense.
Yeah.
Well, Roar is like the equivalent to Vulcan for defense. It just has way too much recoil.
Yeah.
The gimmick is supposed to be it makes itself into a circle, but it can't do itself into a circle because the stoppers prevent it from actually going there.
Yeah, true.
Well, one of the real problems is, and Geetzer keeps always pointing this out, in order to make a good defense bay, it just basically becomes another stamina layer.
And that's the thing too, and I think I remember Shindog talking about this, is that Begum, I don't believe there actually is a defense type. It's just stamina, whatever, attack and balance, right?
Yeah.
And it does make sense, right? Because you can't... What is defense at the end of the day? Even if you really think, what is really defense? It's really just like stamina. That's what it is.
It is.
What drivers are like... Sorry.
Most of the time I look at it, I just feel like defense is just a same spin stamina that just beats regular stamina, but in same spin.
Right, and like there may be some drivers that kind of fill the role, like a non-war never maybe kind of can be like defensive, or like what was the previous? Not moment. Keep that moment if it works. Moment if it works.
Yeah,
Atomic. That was pretty good at destabilizing things.
But for like, okay, I think defense was the idea. Okay, well, the idea was like this Pokemon thing, or like rock paper scissors. Okay, if you use defense, well, attack can't do. But there are like a lot of defense drivers that have like no KO resistance.
Oh no!
Where would y'all put Universe in there?
Universe is very tricky because it depends what stadium you're talking about. If you're talking in standard and if you're in same spin and you're using Universe and standard, you are dead. Universe.
Really? Usually, go ahead, Mike.
It can self-kill.
So it's weird. Like Universe in the Sparking era was a lot better than it is now in the DB era.
Yeah,
I definitely can agree with that, because I think also like Sparking is a very weird meta. Like I don't think Mirage was good, and what I mean by that is not, yes, it was a good equalizer or whatever, but if you look at what Vanish does compared to Mirage, that's kind of what I mean, because Vanish I actually would say is like a good example of like stamina and defense, because it's actually doing both jobs.
Yes, I was actually shocked when, like, because I watched the anime, and when they explained stuff on the anime, I'm like, this Beyblade actually does what the anime says. It tanks those hits because of like where the way those gaps are.
And it's like the perfected version of the Fafnir gimmick. Like what Vanish did was what Geist tried to accomplish, and I think it's cool when they do certain. And there are sometimes when it doesn't work out. And I think there are some stinkers for drivers like the kick driver. Originally, I thought, oh man, it's supposed to balance itself and KO. Oh, that's pretty. And then I did testings and I thought,
yeah,
that's like one of the worst.
Yeah, you have to do the testing with everything that comes out, definitely, in order to see how it's supposed to work. Because I think that's how like new combos get created, new meta parts get created. Like we talked about, like Mikey had his never. We talked Archipel, even though drift was good for opposite spin, and able to do the testing to get it to do well in same spin, and then
Oh
other
yeah,
people started
there's a
using it
DB now.
also.
Yeah, same spin. Yeah.
Yeah, for DB. And we would have never known that if it would have been automatically the assumption like, okay, it's drift, everybody knows it's good in opposite spin. Let's only try it with that instead of people trying to test it to see like, okay, well, now DB comes out. Let's see with this low mode thing, with these Beyblades being a little bit lower, a lot heavier,
Right.
if we can get something to work for it. And I think that's extremely beneficial. And I wanted to go back to what you were saying about the molds for your channel. I think
Right.
I like that. And I like the idea also that you are promoting competitive Beyblade on your channel because you're right. A lot of the a lot of Baytube, a lot of Baytubers or like YouTube videos or even like a lot of information you look up, it's not focused on the competitive scene. Like really the only thing is just the WBO. Um,
Yeah.
so there's not a lot of other things that really promote it. And I get what you're saying. Like, yeah, you can't have a full video or a lot of videos just only talking about it because people like to see the cool stuff. They like to see
Yeah.
the different stadiums and not all competitive based because that's more so for us. But even the idea of what you put to broaden the community,
Yeah.
like that's good. So if someone they are following your channel and they see like, oh, he's got another channel, and then it's like, oh man, I can really go out and compete in this and things like that. And there's other Baytubers I know that are involved in community.
Yeah, and there's like a lot of smaller people that do a great job. Like Think has his testings, Shindog has his testings. Wombat, Blade Kid, and there's a lot of smaller and Frost. There's a lot of small, but they still cover it, and that's a good thing too. And I think, and what I personally do believe is that when Beyblade Burst ends, and what I mean is Takara Tomy, because there's going to be a lot less hype, even if Hasbro is still going on, obviously, right? But I do think definitely competitive has a very good chance of having like a resurgence in popularity for it and a lot more attention to it. That's another reason too why I've been recollecting actually Metal Fight, because I plan to, whenever Burst ends, to redo the reviews, but actually have it in depth on the stuff. I want to just have it where it's like the content is there, but actually like good, like better than like everyone's editing is basically the same, right? It's really just the personality for Baytubers. Yes, maybe they put like a transition, maybe they put like a subtitle, right? But it's almost virtually the same, right? For the most part, it's the personality. What I want to try to do and push for that is that for the competitive side. So I do see, if you look at stuff like Yu-Gi-Oh, I think Crisis talked about, there's a lot of channels I've seen that talk about like the Yu-Gi-Oh cards and builds and whatever, or like Pokemon, for an example, TCG, same idea, or even the games, maybe like certain teams and abilities, right? There's always going to be an aspect of, because, as humans, we're naturally going to be competitive with each other, right? And it's like, it's a cool thing.
100%. Yes.
It's a cool thing, and that's what I really hope. And I have to be clear, there's nothing wrong with the casual side. I just want to like offer a perspective there, to where it's okay. There's this and there's that. That's also why for the Hasbro reviews, I try to do my best. I say, okay, well, in general, it can't do anything against TT. In general, for Hasbro, can't really do. Okay, in quad drive only, maybe you can do this, right? I always try to make sure it's like the fairest possible, right? And and also another thing too, it's like I really respect a lot of these channels that go through these testings, whatever, because a lot of people will not do the homework on this stuff and they will make like these like random claims or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, if you look at this other channel, let's say so and so did this testing. Well, contrary to what you said, it's actually this, right?
Yes. Yeah. I like I said, man, I think it's a really, really good thing. And as you mentioned, yeah, you and Michael Nightwing are the only ones I know that have ever showed anything as far as like the tournament style. And for you to have that base as far as what you talk about, like explaining it, and it brought up another thought or another topic that was discussed once the burst ends and we do go on a little bit of I guess
like a hiatus.
Yeah, a hiatus for it. And you had mentioned like
Right.
it's because of the pandemic and we're getting fewer and fewer releases. Right now, that's kind of for the competitive scene, I'm gonna say it's a good thing.
Yes.
And it's a good thing because we have the time to test more parts and it'll keep it more fun for us. So your channel for the competitive scene, especially for now and years to come, when we have these months or 2 months breaks or however many years once burst stops, we can look at those videos and we could be like, man, let me do some testing. Let me do some testing of my own. And then it's a motivation as well as doing outreach to young kids or even adults and things like that want to get involved with the competitive scene. Or my biggest thing is awareness. Nobody's
Yeah.
going to come out if they don't know about it, but once they learn about it, it's like, oh man, this is happening in my hometown. Let me go check it out and see what it's about.
Yeah, and there's definitely like a somewhat mainstream appeal to Beyblades. Not necessarily competitive, but at least like I've seen like VTubers do, and it was really cool actually, do Beyblades, whatever. So I do like the idea, and at the end of the day, the goal of the WBO and just the general of the community is just to be more welcoming to people, get more people involved. And I think the WBO probably is the best place for the Beyblade community. Least toxic, whatever, most friendly. It's a good outlet for a lot of people to go there to express themselves, maybe just for fun. I see a lot of friends, whatever, that maybe just don't care about competitive, will run like a joke combo. Hey, hey, you're still in the tournament. That's fun, man.
Yeah, yeah, and you can still do unranked things too, or even if you just wanted to come out to play with other people instead of just spending time by yourself at home. It's still really fun to do.
Yeah, and I do think there's definitely like I know ranked is obviously important. And, it's kind of like in the back of my head. I'm like, okay, don't lose this match. Don't lose this match. Okay. But
Yeah,
I do like it just for the fun of it. Like once you really get into the tour, it's fun. It's fun, regardless if you win or lose. And if you lose, you at least learn something of what you lost against, maybe how you lost it. Maybe next event you make a counter. I've seen
hmm
that happen or even during the event, I've seen someone run something and maybe a friend I know runs a counter for it. Right? It gets you thinking, and it's fun no matter how you look at it, right? Whether or
it
not
is.
whether or not you just want to be whatever. I want to run like maybe I have limited parts, right? Maybe, that's just that's a situation sometimes. Well, you can still run it, maybe you do well. I've had a case, and I'm not proud to admit, it was in 3-on-3. I had guilty. I nearly got bodied by Hasbro Emperor Fornius. I couldn't KO it. I couldn't KO it. It was on 3-on-3. I lost the point the one time, and I was like, oh no. There's another time. It was a hypersphere. I don't remember what it was, but I almost got outspun by it. So
hmm
there are factors to it, and that's another thing too, where it's like the single bay versus 3-on-3 versus pick three, choose one, which the difference is just you run one of them, the other one you run three of them, the other one you have three options, but you pick one of them.
hmm There's a lot of. I like the mind games involved in it. I think, yeah.
It was really funny. My very first tournament for the WBO ever was like not long after Rage came out.
Right.
And I was using this most random combo, but it was like a straight counter to Rage, and I didn't even realize it at the time. It was just something I was messing with.
What was
It
it?
was Curse Lucifer 2B on Bearing.
That's kind
Or
of cool.
not 2B, 2D.
Yeah.
Because it's a right spin, and I just launch into tongues come out, and they're like, Rage, go in, and you're doing nothing. Nothing.
And that's another thing too. It's that sometimes there are stuff where people can just throw it, and I think that's also another thing too that I always try to do. Not on the most recent one because it was really cold, and I was just like, okay, no, I'm just sticking with it. But I do think always having a surprise combo is always really fun because it's always going to throw off your opponent. It doesn't even have to be a good combo, right? You can just
hmm
never use it, but it's always mind games are important. And I think it depends. I like 3-on-3 because I like the idea of it's a fair balance to everyone.
Yeah,
Like
that's my favorite too.
a random kid could maybe beat you, right? Because you messed up the order. Or maybe someone could make a comeback, right? I think it's a really cool idea. And I have nothing against pick three, choose one. It's just like a personal preference, right? And I do agree. Pick three, choose one. Probably there is slightly more. Really, for 3-on-3, it's more when you reshuffle, there's more of the mind games. But it's still something that I think is interesting, too, because with WBO deck, it's kind of like the same thing. Like rematch, no rematch, switch or stay, right? It's like it really gets you thinking in the matches what you should have. And there are a lot of times too where like maybe I'll have three combos and I only use one the whole time.
So it's really funny. The majority of people we've talked to, and the majority of people that I talk to outside of this, when we talk about the different WBO first stage formats and which ones they like, the
Right.
majority of people love 3v3 more than any of the others.
I think
Yeah.
it's
And
just because of the casual appeal, to be honest.
and what makes me think about it? WBBA was doing 3v3 before we were. So
Yeah.
they already knew, like, and that's why I always really push, like, a lot of the WBBA stuff would just fit better to use as a standard than in the WBO than what we're trying to do, because they make the products and the rules for each other, and it just fits better to me.
Yeah, and look with the most recent stuff. They have 5G, which they introduced. I'm trying to remember when. I think it was around like end of GT or something like that. And then after Sparking had like the box or something. But they do definitely heavily consider the meta, and that's also probably why you always see in a lot of Japan 5G tournaments, it's very diverse the meta there than it is maybe in the US or Canada. Like. And also, okay, yes, another thing true is also stadiums. And another thing too that's true is that the WBBA did use the Dash Stadium. They did actually use the DB Stadium. And there may be some casual ones, like I think it was, I forget the name. It was like the B00. It's like the really big stadium they released in GT. But I definitely do think we should consider it because it is the origin of where they are doing it. And I do also think that it doesn't hurt to have more options, right? That's also actually recently why I've been trying to get into the Pro Stadium because it is arguably maybe easier access than standard. So it's trying to really see how effective that stadium is and if it has a place, which my opinion is yes, it does.
Yeah, I can agree.
Mm-hmm. It's 100% easier access. The standard stadium, at least here in the United States, is very, very, very hard to get.
To be honest, sorry, go on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. You're fine.
I was gonna say, if you're an attack player, the Pro Stadium's your best friend. If you are the worst attack player, you can still get a KO. I have seen that stadium. It's like the most friendliest I've seen. The ridge difference helps immensely. Yes, you can self KO whatever, but the KO back wall side it's really good. And what I really like about it too is that my only complaint is just how the pockets are. I just wish they were exits. And I do understand that this was like the same mentality they had during Shogun Steel because they had pockets and originally was exits. And I do understand the idea they don't want it, but I don't know, like it's going to be very weird if they do like a Pro DB stadium and it has like 16 pockets or something like really weird.
Yeah. It's I think the Pro. Nah, you go ahead, Mike, because you had something.
I was just gonna say, like, when it comes to like the formats and stuff for WBO, like, because I did that whole proposal, and my whole thing with it is like one of my main things that I really want to see change is mode changing and direction changing. Like, I want to be able to do these gimmicks with my Beyblades, and I feel like allowing more options to do stuff like that increases the skill cap of the game.
I mean, look at Quad Drive. It's literally the entire gimmick is based on changing the performance tip gimmick.
Yeah.
It's like also like look at the anime. It's not like when Volt gave Silas the vortex frame. It's like no, you can't do that. It's outside help. No. Okay, you go stick with it, right? Or even even the anime I think is very different for how KOs work. Well, okay, that's also true. It's the one who touches the floor or whatever. It's not like the because in the anime, it's whoever touches it. If you're out, you're out, right? Because logically, they're already outside of the stadium in the anime. But you know what I mean?
Yeah. I like just to catch back up. I like 3v3 is definitely my favorite, or 3-on-3. It's always been my favorite. No, that's a lie. It has not always been my favorite. But it was a great alternative to the single bay because I wasn't a fan of that. I like pick 3, choose 1. I like the idea of it, but I was leaning more towards 3-on-3 because I felt like it was more balanced for new players. Pick 3, choose 1 is a big mind games, and yes, new players can come in and just choose a bay that nobody's ever seen. Like you said, like sometimes the creative combos that aren't part of the meta and you end up losing to it. But more times than not, the experienced player is gonna take the win. So I wasn't as much of a fan of that because sometimes kids come to tournaments or new players come to tournaments, and if they completely bomb it, they'll cry and then their parents won't bring them back, and that could be for reasons that the kids don't want to come back, or like the parents. Like I took my son to his first tournament and he didn't show out, but he had quite an attitude when he lost. And I was like, I'm done. If I wasn't in love with Beyblade myself, we probably wouldn't be competing anymore.
I think also what's very nice too is how supportive the community is to a lot of new players, whatever. And I think it's always nice because nobody likes to lose, right? Nobody likes to lose. Listen, when I lose, I'm like, well, I'm a little bit bummed out, right? But
yeah,
it's always, and especially too with kids too, is just showing like support and like everyone's respectful here, and there's nothing wrong if you lose. Like at the end of the day, okay, the points don't really matter. Maybe if you're a top player, maybe it's a little bit more personal, but You know, at the end of the day, it's just like an event. You try to enjoy it to the best
True.
that you can.
Very, very, very true. I want to. Did you have anything else on that, Mike?
I mean, I just Grand Dragon tilts me. I lost the stock Grand Dragon once, like 3 in a row, and it just bothered me.
It was sometimes it happens, but sometimes it's not funny. It does suck. It always sucks to lose. But I've seen it. A kid, he came with Archer Hercules. He went against my son. This was during the Sparking Meta Super King, and
Right.
my son lost, and he was upset. You know, he was real upset.
What was the combos?
I cannot remember the combos. I know my son had what did he have? I think he had the Spriggan, World Spriggan on. Yeah, I can't remember all it was on. I know I'm bad with this. Every time I think another interview, somebody asked me like, "What was the combo exactly?" I'm so sorry. Just know it was a decent combo. Like my son runs like pretty much meta combos.
Right.
But this the kid that he went against, they were going in same spin. It was right rotation. He had an Archer Hercules, and I can't remember the rest of the combo, and he won. Yeah, he won, and it wasn't funny to me, but I was kind of like, it happens. It definitely happens. To my next question, or my final question, it was what is the competitive scene like up there? Like, because we don't know. I've been all on the East Coast, like from DC to Florida. I haven't been on the West Coast of the United States, but what is it like up there? Because I don't know how big your community is, but I know you all have the top ranked players. So
Right.
what's it like up there?
Specifically in Canada, it's really just the Toronto scene, I would say, that's very active.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have a big memory gap because we've had very big spaces and events. I would like to think we had a good balance of a lot of people that used attack and a lot of people that used stamina. I do definitely think that maybe here we use a little bit more attack than maybe other areas, and I feel it's probably just a lot more confident players. You have good players like Justin TC that can use attack. 1234 Beyblade that can also use attack. Dan recently too joined events, and you know, I have also other friends too. You know, like I have a lot of friends, whatever, and I do think we are pretty balanced. We don't do like I think we all kind of have like a distaste of drift a bit, and like a lot of like the sometimes because we have like teams or whatever, right? For our like friends, right? And we'll like say, okay, listen, nobody's gonna use drift. We're all gonna agree, right? And like we won't use drift or whatever against each other. Something, you know, it's like good fun or whatever. I do think definitely the meta is interesting. I do think sometimes there are experiments, but I do think it is just a general thing with the meta. But I do feel a lot of people just follow whatever is going on, and that's it. Like in the sense that this wins. Okay, well that's all I need.
Yeah, that's true. Do y'all do that with unranked also, where y'all make agreements, or do y'all just go in there and be like, I'm playing to win?
On ranked, sometimes we troll.
I mean ranked. My bad.
Well, if I get to finals, my idea was I always try to at least have one meme combo, and I try to sometimes we do. It depends. It depends who we go up against too, right? If it's like a really top ranked player, you know, like okay, it's a little bit serious. If it's like you know,
we're pretty cutthroat here in Maryland.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing here in North Carolina. Like, no, we all come to play to win. Like, we don't. Well, no, I have seen one time. I think it was Beyblade Blast 11 and Archipel.
Right.
They both went up and they had agreed they were gonna use attack, and they even said it like we'll go with rage on a rubber flat. And I don't know if they were that specific with it, but they were going to use attack, and they both came up with rage and a rubber flat, and then they had to battle, and it was really cool to see because both of them they're pretty skilled players, and when they went with the attack combos, and I got to judge that, so that was really really unique and nice to see. But that doesn't happen too often. Usually it's like, you know, you're hiding your Beyblades, hiding your combos, like you're doing it in secret, and then you come up and you're always trying to get the win.
Yeah, typically for events, they'll pretty much almost vary the same. Like even when we had the ban on the repeated, the meta is more or less the same that I've noticed. Like people will just run whatever is safe or whatever, right? That's and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like I'm not like that's just how it is. But that's why I also like very much like 3-on-3 because it makes it harder for you to try to be as safe as possible because there's the sense of like RNG, right? Because you don't know what you're gonna go up against, and that's also why I think I don't hate single bay. It's just I feel it's very outdated for what it is currently. Like,
Yeah.
listen, if it's worked so much, and we have 3-on-3 basically ranked now. Like, listen, we don't. I'm not saying get rid of it, but I don't. It's like
It's all right. It's all right.
it's
You can say it.
it's kind of like food you don't want to eat, but you have to eat it, right? It's just like
Yeah.
I'll take a bite,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it's there. The only benefit I see with it, or I've seen with it now, is when I'm at certain events and things like that, and kids don't have, or kids or adults or whoever don't have that many bays,
right.
and they still want to compete. So,
Or
yeah,
I haven't seen the problem be so much as kids don't have enough bays as much as it is they don't have enough real bays.
well, that's what I'll go on because we have a kid
Right.
here, but a lot of his bays, they weren't authentic bays. So,
Amazon, yay!
I was gonna.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
definitely and that's also another thing too. That well, this is a funny story. I think I don't remember what Anime North it was. I just remember it was during sometime Chozi GT, but no one checked the kid who had the fake Chozi Achilles. We were doing my match. My perfect Phoenix broke the wing of it, and that's when we found out it was fake.
Oh,
So that was just. I mean,
yeah,
I feel bad, but they can't just get there.
yeah,
Like, at some point, I didn't know whether I was angry at the kid that they used the fake and they got that for, or like the judge that did not check properly, right? And
yeah.
it definitely is an issue of and I don't blame whatever the situation is, but I think what's really nice here too is that we have a lot of people that will just lend bays whatever. I'm all right with now because lockdown's over or whatever and it's okay to do so. But if someone wants help or whatever, like maybe a friend will help lend them, or if they want me to lend, I can, and it's like. I think it's a good idea too that if they are limited, just the idea of being supportive for whatever the situation is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
100%.
I,
Go
I
ahead.
actually have a box of just straight extra parts that I'll bring just for people to use if they don't have real bays and stuff.
And that's a good thing too. And I think in the case here, it's the case I've seen is not necessarily have the TT, it's just they have Hasbro, and I do feel bad, right? Because there's such a big the difference between the power levels. But I'm talking about DB, right? It's not like where it would make sense, like maybe limited. I'm talking like they had like a hypersphere or something, right? And I'm like, well, good luck. That's all I can
Yeah,
say.
yeah. How is Beyblade North? Like, I guess I'm asking you to be my eyes for there because I haven't been. I've talked to Geekster,
Right.
because he's visited, but
Oh, like
you
Anime
living
North
there.
or just Canada?
Yeah, Anime North.
Yeah, and Anime North. Let me say that
Right.
on how it's like because I know like I said I spoke with your dad and I know y'all
Right.
have been a part of those events and definitely helped out even with the prizing and stuff like that, which I think is very very cool and sweet in the past.
Right.
But what are those experiences like, or what's that venue like?
It's honestly really nice. I don't remember what venue I remember we had like Shugatsu or whatever, but COVID, whatever delay. But no, it's a very nice thing. We have like a good enough venue, good enough space and everything. And there's supposed to be a lot of players this hopefully if there's no lockdown, whatever. Okay, fingers crossed that we still have it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But no, I really do like it. There's a lot of new people that maybe come around just to see it, and it's just good to have conversations, whatever. I think it's honestly really fun. It's also very intense because it's a lot of people. So I don't blame anyone if it's like it's you get a little bit nervous because it's like a lot, but those events are just nice. I actually remember that I don't remember what year it was, but I remember I met like I think it was like someone who cosplayed as Daigo or Dana, right? It
Hmm.
was really cool, right? And it's just cool to sort of meet like more people in the community that's not just competitive, right? It's good to see other people.
Hmm. Hmm. I could 100% see and agree with that. I love conventions. Like I've been going to the same convention for the past 3 or 4 years, minus COVID. Because 2020, actually, no, actually for the past 2 years they stopped it just because of COVID and the pandemic. This year was the first year that it opened back up, and it was an eye-opening experience. I think more now this year because I was actually a vendor.
Right.
The community that's there, it's just so great how people come together and whether you have different interests or not, you're all part of that convention for anime, for gaming. The one I went to was a gaming convention. And it was just a whole lot of fun. So I know like having a Beyblade tournament at one of those or something like that, man, it's got to be sweet.
No, yeah, it definitely is. I'm trying to remember because I don't remember when the last. It was probably a long time ago. It's probably why my memory is very hazy. But
Hmm.
I think it was 2019. I think probably was, but
I know our last one was. Yeah.
yeah. But no, the events I think, and generally with the events in general is just good. For the convention stuff, you see a lot more new people that maybe like and maybe want to sign up for the thing. And I think the idea of tournaments is just fun because also you get to meet a lot of people. Even if I would say I'm a little bit more introverted than a lot of people, but I don't mind making a little bit of small talk or whatever for people at events.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big introvert too, and sometimes like my wife picks on me because I have when I do talk, I'm awkward. Like it's weird. Like, we're all on this podcast and we're
Right.
talking our hearts out, but it's different when you're face to face.
Yeah,
It's
because
like it's way different. Like this, like I've set aside time to do this. I knew it was coming. Everything like that. Like we talk, we're communicating, we're here, and we're talking about something that we all enjoy. But just walking up to someone like randomly, I have my issues with that too. But I know at the conventions, like it helps you to warm up, because honestly, it's full of people like us that are pretty much introverts. But at those events and things like that, we can express ourselves in a different way than we won't be able to do, I guess, to say in the real world
right.
or whatever. Yeah. So that's pretty dope, pretty sweet. Do you use attack? I know I just jumped to a whole nother thing, but y'all talking about the
Just throwing
way
mind
that
games at
y'all
me right
play up
now.
there, but
Whoa. Okay, hold on. Uh, that's such a curveball. You're going on that thing. I was
my
listening.
bad. Yeah, I was talking about anime. No, I was like, hey, because my mind jumps
Oh,
from place to place.
all right, so that's how the meta is in the podcast. All right, okay, it's a little bit different. Yeah, no,
You don't have to answer it if it needs to be kept secret, only to canon, then that's fine.
Give me a second.
Yeah.
So I remember in Chosi, I think I did. I don't even know what you call that type of combo. It was like winning Valkyrie. Maybe I think it was like zero bump atomic, right? And it was like I don't know what you call that type of combo. Balance or it was attack. I don't know. I know it's like probably some specific name, right? But when I really started getting into attack was in GT, and I still do believe, at least for burst, that attack was its strongest because you have Zwei, you have command, you have judgment. Is probably like the best example I've ever seen of an attack type. It does the job. It KOs. It could potentially burst. It does everything you want an attack type to do. I have run attack quite a bit. I think sparking was more of an issue, unless you count raids. Which raids is kind of like, well, that was our only option, right? Because brave was like this thing where it's like, brave is not as good as people believe because there is the 2H asses that helps it, but and maybe also 2S or whatever, right? But like brave was kind of poor for a thing, and only really like you really only had rage and you had hollow, and also going all the way back to when talking about labeling of types, like Tempest is labeled for attack, but no person uses Tempest for attack. It's all stamina, right?
Attack on the box.
I think with DB, I've definitely, I think mostly just guilty, just because it's like my preferred. But I sometimes will do Savior, and if I want to use Right Spin Nexus plus S, and for whatever reason I don't want to use it on Guilty, I'll pick Ultimate Nexus plus S. And I do think attack is very rewarding to use. And also there are more factors like hardness and softness to rubber, what tip you use. For DB in specific, you are basically required to choose between like 3 drivers, basically, like Extreme Dash, Jolt Dash, I guess, even though it's kind of like below those two. Really just Extreme Dash and Quick Dash, right? Because the bays are so heavy now, they'll need a lot of momentum to actually go through it. So it does kind of limit it. Like, there are nicher options where, like, you could use Destroy, you know what I mean? But, like, for attack specifically, I feel like it's just rewarding to win with it, right? Because it's not necessarily that stamina. If you stamina, oh, look, easy, laugh at him, he's using stamina, right? It's nothing like that, right? It's just that when you use attack, you could either burst them or you could KO them, and it's satisfying because it's a lot of practice. I would say it generally takes more practice to control attack than it does stamina, because attack you have to worry a lot more about self KOing, and also, for an example, extreme. There are so many variations in the rubber softness, right? And if you get to an example of, let's say, the latest variant of Metal Extreme or Extreme Dash, those are like okay, but even those have issues of self KOing, and even you could be like the best attack player, right? you could still lose by a self KO. And also too is that I don't think just pure attack is good too. I do think there should be a balance. Like if you just have all attack the whole time, it's the same thing as having all stamina, right? So I do like to have a balance between the stuff for what I use. I think more for the GT stuff that were happening, and hopefully it goes well. I do plan to run, mostly attack, but a lot of mixed stuff. So my biggest prayer for BU is that, for the love of God, there at least an attack type that we can use. That it's not just save your ultimate. Like, listen, okay, Divine.
Yeah.
There's no way they can convince me. Oh, the A gear, whatever. Oh, the whatever the armor. There's nothing that's gonna save that thing. And I've been very critical of Divine. I don't understand how they had Dynamite, and the thing has basically evolved backwards, other than maybe like the core, right? It's like it's like a Hasbro thing. It's like, what happened?
He said it regressed. That's funny.
Because
it did though.
It loses to dangerous. It loses to dangerous. Even if, let's say, A gear makes it slightly more stable, just, oh my god. I'm very happy they're doing Excalibur. Excalibur has been a thing where I've had a personal bias towards it, because I just love the lore behind the sword, and I also just have loved everything except for like Xeno and Buster. Like, the original one is very solid for its time. Xeno, we don't talk about Xeno. Sieg during God was pretty cool. Buster, it's like, for some reason, if you notice the trend, every single time it's when they make the sword rounder. The original one was sharp, Xeno was rounder. Sieg was sharp, Buster was rounder. It's like, they gotta just like consider. And another thing too, it's like, look at, for an example, I hope the new Achilles that's supposed to come out. We already know Dragon's probably most likely going to be stamina, right? But the Achilles, I hope it's more based on Chozi Achilles, because that was heavily used for attack during Chozetsu. And like, listen, I'm gonna be honest. Like, as cool as the attachments are, I don't like them in the long run if you think about it. Because for Achilles to essentially be relegated to the point where you have to be like, okay, buddy, well, here's the shield, here's the attack that's not really that good, right? Just give me the Achilles that's got the metal swords on it, and I'm happy. I'll take a Death Scyther again, or I don't know what else we had for. Or okay, well, not attack, but also I've said this, is that if they ever make a BU Judgment, that would be incredible. So long as it's very close to the original.
Well, that was one thing. I had a conversation with my buddy recently, and I was talking about Infinite, and I was like, if they would have made the swords on Infinite metal and then had the shield and sword, that thing would have been insane.
I think what would have made sense is if they kind of did what Chozi Achilles did, where they're not really Chozi. Well, Chozi Achilles had the metal contact, yeah, but it was kind of like on like a limited section of it. I think if they just gave it because the important thing too is weight, right? The lighter you are, the worse case that it is. For an example, Greatest Raphael, the layer incredible opposite spin. Same spin, you're gonna get clapped. Now, obviously, maybe some cases you win, right? But weight's such an important thing. So really, what's so stressed upon is that if a release is not heavy, okay, first of all, weight's not everything, right? Obviously, another thing is like shape or whatever, the weight distribution, right? But generally, weight is the contributing factor of it, right? And it's like a thing that I just hope they do well. Like, I don't want to get to like what's the next one that's coming out? Chain Kerbeus, right? And Chain Kerbeus, for whatever reason, the blade is like 7 grams or something. I'm not going to run that. You kidding me?
I'm also kind of tired that they're putting rubber on everything.
And this is the issue, is that they put themselves in this corner. What else can they do? It's either it's metal, it's rubber, or it's palm. That's all they got. And they can't do it. And I don't blame them, because they can't really think of anything else. Like, look at Jet Wyvern. Okay, they gave it the ratchet gimmick, kind of modified, but they basically gave it rubber. It's like they're in this corner. That's all they can do, because the bays have got. And the idea with BU is it's supposed to be like the maximum series of metal fight. Like, it is the ultimate. Even though Divine is supposed to be the ultimate attack type, and
Yeah, no, that's not happening. But maybe this is my wishful thinking, because they didn't. Well, they probably already have all the designs out.
Oh no, yeah, they already have months ahead of time. Months ahead of time, they already have like a year ahead of time planned.
They
I
probably
would tell
have
you though.
the rest of this year planned.
You said what?
I said they probably had the rest of
Oh no,
this year planned.
they always have it. Like remember in Sparking, we
Mhm.
got like everything up to like variant Lucifer or whatever. They already have all the stuff planned. Maybe like production is different than like the designs or whatever. So production is usually like 1 to 3, like 3, maybe like 3 to 2 months behind the release or something. So if something comes
Okay.
out in like August, maybe okay. So what is that? August to July, June, maybe May. Or, you know what I mean, right? It depends.
hmm
Sometimes
I
maybe. Sorry, go on.
Well, go ahead. No, you good. Go ahead.
No, but they have this stuff definitely planned ahead of time. But I do definitely think that they need to work on some of the creativity. Now, listen, I'm okay if a driver like deserved like this variation. I'll take it. Like high extend plus dash was needed, right? They had to do it, right?
hmm
Do we really need like metal excel, metal fusion, metal defense? Do we really need
Yeah.
like high mat? Now maybe you can argue, okay, those are filler, right? I do think, and I don't know why they don't do this, but the plastic gen, and I'm sure metal fights have plenty of concepts they have not done yet, and they can still do. Because a
hmm
lot of stuff is loosely inspired by, and obviously it makes sense, right? They can't be nothing is truly creative. It's always going to be like something very close, right? But when you get stuff like Justin Kick, right? You know,
Yeah.
you ask yourself the question, what are they doing? What are they doing?
Yeah.
Even
But
Atomic
Yeah.
Dash, like I like Atomic Dash on the older stuff, but like for DB, it's kind of clapped. Like you can't really do anything with it.
But you know, the only thing I can give them when it comes to like kick and whatnot is I'd rather see a brand new driver that I
Right.
have to test out instead of getting Metal Destroy. I know how Destroy works. The metal cap doesn't change enough on it to matter.
You know,
You know,
yeah.
I would have liked to have seen them do something completely different for Guilty to have for a driver.
I think
I've lost
I
to a stock Faf Vanish combo. I've lost a kick. The kid he played with it like,
Well,
hey, y'all,
you might need to quit the game then, buddy. I'm
you
sorry.
I'll
you might
forgive.
with the
I'll
Grand
forgive if it was
Dragon.
attack or something.
He well he played with it. It got
What did it beat?
it was awoken. And I know that's gonna sound weird to say, like who
I remember.
awoken kick, but
I
that
know.
was
I
one of
did.
his only bays, and it was it spun well and it outspun me, but I mean it is what it is. He launches I think a player's launch, like we talked about this, really goes into the factor of like their skill and stuff like
Oh,
that, or just the
I,
way that they play. Yeah,
I,
maybe I have excuses.
no,
Forget you,
no,
Mike.
no. No, nothing wrong
It's
with
just
that.
what it
No,
is.
it's just I remember people picking on me because of my launch strength, and it's like, well,
Oh,
buddy, who's in the
yeah.
rankings right now, huh? I
I
don't
will
even want
say
to say
one
that to
thing.
like brag. It's just like people like okay. So for an example, launch strength, and sorry to cut you off, Crisis, and
No, you're good, buddy. You're good.
so the important thing with launch strength is what it matters in context. So in an opposite spin battle, okay, maybe you got to launch lighter, maybe sometimes both you launch hard, right? But not all the time. You need like to like crank it out where you break the launcher's gears inside the launch. Like you don't always need a strong launch. Like there are plenty of people I know that launch fine and they don't need it, right?
hmm
Now,
I've come to realize that the DB launchers with the power gear, like they basically do everything for you.
yeah, and
Yeah, they
Like
do. They do.
especially with the gold one too,
Yeah.
yeah,
insane. And I don't think they
You
can
shouldn't.
do anything else beyond the gold. Like, what else are you gonna do? It's like it's already hard enough to get the full launch on the
it,
gold.
people don't realize there is such a thing as over launching too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I learned that from you, Mike, and because you learned. I know we had talked about it because I was launching too hard at one point,
yeah.
and when you launch too hard, you risk self bursting, but also like I don't know the exact physics behind it, but it's like the Beyblade it didn't launch smooth enough. So once it does hit the stadium, it's like a little chaotic,
Oh, I know
and
what
then
you
it
mean. I
doesn't
know what you
spin
mean.
as
I know
long.
what you mean. So,
Yeah.
so some okay, yeah, okay, now I understand. There's sometimes where maybe I think it gets cut on the launcher when you're launching really fast or whatever, and maybe it hits or whatever, and then after it causes the disc or something to like to burst. But I know what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times too, if you're an attack player, listen, there it is. You gotta launch good, but if you launch too strong,
Yeah.
and it also depends on how soft your driver is, right? So let's say I'm using like the blue quick dash. I'll probably be pretty good if I launch hard. If I use the silver extreme dash, I'll probably be pretty good. And a lot of times too, it's also thinking in your head of conserving parts. Like I think as nice as the silver extreme dash is, and no matter how many times you try to convince me if there is like some easy way to get it, it's like it is still pretty like How fast it wears, it's like insane.
Mine is literally
Yeah.
a keep dash right now.
Like-
My Silver Extreme.
Like
It is a keep
I
dash.
barely used it. I used it a little bit for videos. I don't even think I got a chance to use it for tournaments, and it was already gone.
No.
It was like a stub. A stub.
I like Geetzer and his mom because I didn't really use attack too much, but
Right.
they would use attack, and so they would borrow my Extreme Dash, and the only ones I had at the time were 2 of the silver
Oh.
ones. And then by the time I went to start practicing attack, I'm like, this thing doesn't even do a flower pattern; it just sits in the center for some reason. Why?
Yeah, and don't forget too, the higher speed you go, the more it's likely going to skip the ridge or something. And that's also another thing too. You
Yeah.
could wall slam a lot, and a wall slam is the worst thing that can happen to you because I think I mentioned the guilty thing with the metal extreme whatever, and that's how wall slams do a lot against you, and I think the anime's been very accurate on it because what's happening is you're spinning, right? But the wall's not spinning, right? So when you're hitting it, it's stopping your motion and it's causing the disc to move, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's such an interesting thing with launching because there are a lot of and there are a lot of times for drivers you can just straight shoot it, but there are a lot of like for bearing, for an example, I prefer you kind of tilt it because if you straight shoot bearing, I've seen it and it happened where it will just go on the ridge and it kills the stamina.
Yeah. I've only seen bearing. Well, my son has one. It's a little worn down, and I think Mike. I think when I was at
Right.
your place, you had a bearing that was worn down, and that thing went wild.
Yeah, my
Um,
red bearing is actually an attack driver.
And the thing is
Yeah.
too is that bearing is a driver that is like it's like basically like the best stamina, right? But it's also one of the most inconsistent I've ever seen. Because I have seen players die to like I have had this happen where I was going against a good pal of mine, Tahor, and I was like 2-0. This man did the best comeback I've ever. We were like basically mirror match, best comeback I've ever seen. My bearing died so bad it became 2-0, 2-3. He won.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. The worst, I would say my worst inconsistency I seen as far as like stamina drivers though is zone dash or zone dash plus Z, whatever you want to do it, because
Yeah,
when it's fresh out the box,
it's stable,
legit.
but when it's worn, yeah, go to town.
Oh man, it's way too erratic. It does become like an attack style, and then it's like his stamina isn't even
I do and also
it isn't
recommend.
even worth talking
Well, I
about.
don't think it's not legal. No, it's not legal. There's the Hasbro Plus C, and honestly, it
Mhm.
is a little bit slept on. It's not okay. What I mean by this is just that it's definitely a good option because if you imagine the metal and everything, when you hard launch all that weight and going crazy, right? It probably does do something. And I
Mhm.
think it's more defensive. You probably use it, but I think with the plastic one, it's a little bit less. I don't know in that sense.
Mhm.
I at least think too that the one thing I wish too is just that if in the perfect world that Hasbro and TP were cross compatible in the sense that obviously you can assemble them, but you know what I mean, like Hasbro had teeth, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But if they did Hypersphere, they did Slingshot, they did basically virtually the same, we would have so many options and so many possibilities. And the one thing I'm thankful for is the Plus C. Even though actually, you want to know what? We were supposed to get a Plus X from Hasbro, and you can actually see if you have the Exceed Plus X from Hyperion Flamebringer, you'll notice if you try to
Mhm.
twist it, the prongs are there. It's not fused, so they definitely considered it. But for some reason, when they were designing it, they just decided to permafuse it on. And it's like so. Sometimes they make like the best decisions that I think are really. And sometimes it's like, well, what are you doing, buddy? What are you doing?
Yeah, I like the I haven't played with them as much, but the Hypersphere drivers, have you used them like or seen them in any competitive style play? Like how are they with stamina?
So Hypersphere is a very unique thing because while I don't want to make fun of it, it is technically all the same. They're all just giant
Mhm.
spheres. There are spheres with variations, but
Yeah.
there is maybe difference. Like I think like maybe like one of the good ones is like linear or whatever it was, right? There
Mhm.
definitely is. So I'm pretty sure there's people doing like Hypersphere format or something, and they're doing it in the vertical drop. So like the original one, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's like it's very interesting because it's not only just the layers, but it's also how they're traveling. And I do think it's an interesting thing. And I do think if we have, and I maybe, hey, why not a speed storm? Why not a quad? Like it doesn't hurt, right? It doesn't. I think having options there doesn't really hurt the game. It's just something extra on there. Like even for Hasbro, like there's nothing complicated with it. Like for Hyper, for an example, you can run like Turbo Spryzen or whatever, or Balkesh or something, or I don't know. I don't know true depth like the hypersphere meta, right? It's not my cup of tea, but I do definitely
Mm-hmm.
understand that there's an audience for it, and I do like that. It's like a cool thing, right? It's like they found some use out of it, and it's a nice thing. But that's also why, for an example, there's some things I like to separate. Like for Hasbro only, get Pro Series out of there. If Pro Series not already out, get it out of there. Because what you basically have is that, well, yes, Pro Series is
Yeah.
Hasbro.
Yeah, but it's like TT
It's
versus.
just TT versus Hasbro.
Yeah.
You got a bootleg GT format. That's what it is.
Yeah. I thought about that because somebody posted in one of the tournament threads. I think it was a Hasbro only tournament, and they were like, "Is Pro Series allowed?" And I was thinking, like, of course not.
Yeah.
And someone else said, like, yeah. And then I looked through the rules before, I made a comment, and I was like, oh my goodness, like,
And I do.
Pro Series is still in there.
And I definitely think it's something we need. And it's what the Crisis was talking about, the whole thing with the implementation of rules and trying to look at that. So, like with 3G, 5G, whatever, I definitely do think we should be. Maybe, like, I mean, we made, like, the joke for the longest time, like, the foreign substance thing, how vague that was and whatever, right? Because it's like, no one's gonna read that. Like, if a drop of rain hits your bay, right? You can't use that bay, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
the terms got to
Yeah.
be very clear, because if I think there was something too. Was something like can't an organizer run two different stadiums in the same event?
Technically.
Yeah, like technically, I
what-
never knew that. I thought it was just within these options you can run one of them. I didn't realize.
Well,
Wait, is that a thing?
Yeah,
yeah.
I was so confused because that doesn't make any sense. Obviously, if you want to run events, I can understand, but that would have to be all unranked because let me give an example, right? The worst nightmare for an attack player standard. If you're running in a standard stadium and then after the finals are in a DB stadium, yeah, that would definitely throw people off, right?
Yeah, I forgot. I was thinking because I only play burst standard, so
Or even
I
pro in standard or dash in standard, right? Or if dash got approved.
Yeah, well, that was like when I made the proposal and I put the DB stadium in there as another stadium. First off, like I kept trying to explain to people, the reason I had the DB stadium in there instead of the Pro Series was because of pockets, because I'm trying to make it consistent with the KO rule that I had tried to.
Yeah, because Pro
word
Series
as
is very
well.
complicated for KOs because what the issue is that they have, and what I said is that they work for the modern stuff, but for me personally, that's like maybe God and below for what you'd use them for because of their size, right? And like, how does the back wall and the side wall really work if they just hit the entire pocket? Is someone gonna argue like the centimeter shifted to the left or something? Like,
Right.
it's a difficult
it's very
thing.
complicated.
And when people say I prefer Pro over DB, I understand where they're coming from. But then after if you ask them about the KO rule and the consistency on that, okay, well now it's a more complicated. And I think just have more options, right? I'm not gonna say okay. Actually, I personally don't like the Dash Stadium at all. But if I had to choose between not having the Dash DB or whatever, having all the options, I'll take all the options then. And it doesn't mean the organizer has to people can choose what events they want to sign up for, right? It's their choice.
Right.
And you can become an organizer. I'm going to become an organizer because I want to maybe try out some stuff and I want to host events. It's a nice thing to do. And I've heard from friends it's not too bad or whatever. And I think it's like a nice thing. And for events, I want to try out stuff. Maybe I want to try 5G on DB and experiment. And it's like the thing too. It's like, let's say DB gets approved, whatever the case is, DB standard or DB just allowed in the regular pool. Like, is someone going to complain regardless that, this organizer's only running this? Like, yeah, but it's their personal choice. You can't, listen. Unless they're not forcing you to, go to the thing. You got to be more open to the options. Because, listen, we have done standard for so many years, right? I don't think it's necessarily fair to complain now that we're getting more options that, I don't like it.
Right. Like that's my whole thing too. Like, it's just there to give people an option. It doesn't mean that you have to play in it. And if you really don't want to play in it, but say your area, the organizer that's there is always using that stadium, well, become an organizer and host one yourself.
And hey, they can lend you stadiums or whatever. You can ask people to lend. If you don't have stadiums, they can ask you to lend stadiums. And listen, I'm not saying. And for DB, for what I personally want, I think it's best just to have a separate format, DB standard, or something like that, or maybe even dash standard, right? Because it makes it less of, oh, well, because of this very specific thing, oh, whatever, right? It just makes it less sort of back and forth, right? It makes it a little bit easier for people. Is that way they have the option, and maybe even the same thing for pro. And pro I'm a little bit shaky on, because I don't know if I don't know if, because what are the current legal stadiums for Burst right now?
For standard?
Yeah, for Burst, isn't it just the standard stadium?
Just the
Yeah.
standard stadium.
Yeah.
That's the standard.
That's why I was trying to open it up to like the DB, because the standard stadium are too expensive right now.
And I think another issue
Yeah.
too is how exactly the experiment stuff gets approved, right? Because it's a bit odd how many months it takes for it to get approved. Like a format, or to make a change, like let's say you do a format, okay, we want to make these change, okay, now you got to go through that. Like, I don't understand the process, right? But I do think maybe to look at that, and just because the game is changing, right? And unranked versus ranked, people go to unranked, people go to ranked, but maybe a lot of players maybe feel more inclined maybe just for ranked, right? And I feel if we have more ranked options doesn't hurt. Like, I don't really. Another thing to actually wanted to mention, I don't know if this was talked about before, but the idea of rankings, I do feel maybe not reset, but I do think maybe something like rankings for just the spring or fall, or maybe yearly rankings or something, could make it more interesting, or like resetting it every year. Because if you think about it, in a way, it's kind of cool because it gives new people a chance to shine. Maybe you can still have like overall ranking or something like that, but maybe like, well, I don't know about that. Okay, maybe just reset it.
Now, I think the overall ranking is legit, because that's an accomplishment that everyone has. But the seasonal ranking, because it's like you said, the game is evolving. There's new players coming in.
I think it's a good way to like highlight like newer skill, like maybe like some.
Yeah.
Because like, listen, like everyone's gonna have a little bit of an ego for like in the top 10, right? Like let's be honest now, right? Because it's like you got that far, right? It's an accomplishment. But the idea too is like, if we maybe have it in a way where either we reset, or maybe we have, and obviously too, it's like it's a programming nightmare, I'm sure, just to have it, and they would have to probably just set it up a lot later on, right? I'm not denying that, but I do think having the option there could be a lot more encouraging to people, right? Let's say, for an example, let's say we have DB ranked, right? But I do really bad in that thing or whatever, right? Let's say it's just for that year, or maybe it could be, maybe seasonal could make a little bit more sense, because maybe yearly, some could argue maybe yearly's too much of a time. Maybe seasonal can make more sense, like spring, summer, winter, fall, or something. But maybe you could highlight, maybe I do really bad in the spring, but in the fall or something I did really well or something. I think it could also maybe highlight like the pools of data for like what people use, or what was the meta like, or what changed or something. Because if you look at like older generations like Metal Fight and HMS or Plastic, like there's still the audience for it, and the meta has greatly changed. And the good thing too is that you have a lot of veteran players there helping out with information, and it really just gives perspective on the stuff. And I think it's really cool. And also I think, just the idea too, we can take liberties, right? I don't think we have to have it to where it's just this.
True.
Well, what I feel like would be probably the best option, because I feel like having the long-term overall ranking system can really just get really skewed and messed up, because if someone played from start to finish, like they could just sit at number one the entire time.
Yeah, like if people retire
and just because
and
of the
sit in
point.
spot, yeah.
Right. So what I think the best option to do is you reset it yearly, but at the end of the year, you create a Hall of Fame for like the top 25 players, and like, here's the Hall of Fame. This year, these guys were the best. That way, then it's always there. It'll forever be there. It's there. They can always be like, hey, look at my accomplishment back in 2015.
And I think, too, it's not necessarily to say that, because what rankings basically are just how many wins you've gotten overall over a period of time, right? Doesn't mean just because, let's say I don't even know where I am, like 13, 12, whatever, right? Doesn't mean I'm the best player in Burst Classic. Doesn't mean I'm the best player in Limited, right? It just is in. That's why I think it's very important too to like, if we have it more specific, it better highlights what their skill is at, because overall is kind of vague, right? Because let's say you study into a field or whatever, you can be very good in that field, but maybe there's something very specific in that field that you're good in or something, right? Like in science has so many things and variations. Social science, actually, you know what I mean, like physics or whatever, right? So I really like the idea that he brought up of reset and maybe like a top 25. I also think, and this has just been a general thing that I think talked about recently, I do think the social media for WBO could definitely maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit more attention.
Yeah.
100%. That's one thing the WBO desperately needs.
I'm willing to obviously help with that because first of all, the last upload was many years ago. But what I was getting to that was what I think was really cool is maybe there could be like whoever they can get to interview. Maybe they like at the end there's like an interview for like the top 25 players for like Burst or Metal Fight or HMS in Plastic. It'd be like something really cool. It gets engagement from, because there are a lot of players that I know that maybe just like the original Plastics or maybe prefer Metal Fight or you know what I mean, right? But it's good to kind of, if we broaden it and we try our best to really get in front, it's like long term, whatever. And obviously, this takes time to whatever works, not just a snap of a finger. But I think it could be good.
I 100% agree with you. I 100% agree with that. I think the social media thing is definitely something that needs to be done, especially if you could help with that. And I think it's a lot of it is just because of how the WBO has changed and evolved over years.
It's like
not just the WBO, but like culture as a whole. You know what I'm saying?
Because people are at home now, and like there's a lot more. Obviously, I don't have the statistic, but I do feel people have paid a lot more attention online to the internet than they have pre the pandemic, right?
Yes.
And I also do think it's like a good thing because there's a lot of communities that maybe also get some shine more, or maybe can get more attention, or maybe that are niche or whatever. And I do think that aspect is kind of what I've talked about with like the thing after Burst ends that I want to kind of do. I think if you're able to tap into that audience, it could be really helpful to the overall community because the goal is just to get more players in, or at the very least, just I'm sure there's like a lot of players that are maybe just turned off by the new stuff, whatever, and want to get into it, but
yeah. I've run into a lot of that, like I was mentioning with the convention that I was at. A lot of the players or a lot of the people that were coming up didn't know about competitive Beyblade. So I was introducing them to that and they were intrigued, but it was a lot of the nostalgia that they had from past generations in their childhood, like because we had some HMS bays there and they were like, oh man, I remember this. And they would talk with their friends like, yeah, I had this Dragoon or whatever. And some people want to play with those things. It is hard to get though. I will say that. And it can get a little bit pricey, but for the people who still have it, collected it and things of that nature, like it will be a good avenue for them.
Well, I think I can't speak like 100%, but I do think for Plastic or HMS, if people are hosting, they can definitely just lend stuff or whatever. And I think and it's talking about lending or whatever. And it's like a nice thing too. It's just because each generation of Beyblade is very different from each other. From people who grew up with attitudes to each other, whatever, it's very different, right? I grew up with Metal Fight. Technically, I could have grew up with Plastics or whatever, but wasn't at that point really. But you know what I mean. Like I went through Metal Fight, but I understand the perspective of Burst. But that's also why it's very interesting to see a lot of the consumer's perspective on the products, because if you compare, like, for Metal Fight fans, right, if you look at Metal Fury, right, everybody I knew went against Metal Fury, right, at the start, right, with all the nerfs, whatever. But, with Hasbro, it's a lot different because I think it's just different how they view it, and it's like, it's a lot more defenses to it. Like, if Metal Fury was like what it was now, right, and people were talking about it, they'd be like, oh my god, Cosmic Pegasus, even though it doesn't have the 4D gimmick, I like the Spark Effects recolor, like...
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Things have to evolve and I suppose change with the times are going on with the times.
We should be more welcoming to each of the generations. That's also why I try to help. A lot of people join the WBO. I try to help so many people. They're trying to get in with recommendations. I try to help explain stuff. I had a friend who kind of knows Beyblade, whatever, and I even sat there for like an hour or whatever, just trying to help explain. And I think it's always like a good thing because it just helps people get into the game.
It does. I had a dad recently come to one of the events, and I let him use my spare parts. I actually didn't help him build because I was judging at the event, but we had another competitor there that helped him build some combos and things like that and explained it to him. He actually fell in love with attack. He had I think it was Evolution Dash.
Right.
And he was running that, and he was launching it very well. He had like a 5-minute pregame or practice of understanding, and he did really well. Fell in love with the game. Yeah. Did y'all have any other topics of discussion or anything? Or let me ask the question I always ask. Zenki, did you have any questions for us, either of us?
I don't know. I don't have really supposed to have a question.
Nah. It's all right. It's all right.
I didn't know it was like that. I thought I was just getting asked. I was like, all right.
No. So, with all of them, we always we have our questions, but then if you had any for us or anything for the community,
sure.
on a final word, give you
Let me think. Okay, no, here's an easy one. So, whatever time you started, what have you noticed with how the game has been changing and evolving, whether good or bad? What are some things that you've noticed? Like, could be like how the meta is, maybe mentality for parts or something. I'm always curious on this because obviously I'm in Canada here and we have, I know the perspective here for what we have, but it's always good to know the other way around.
Mike.
So, okay,
Mike, I was gonna go first because I don't think my answer would be as in depth as yours.
Okay, go ahead.
Because you just have way more knowledge in this regard than mine. I would say, one of the things I've noticed is as far as the game and the meta changing is the size of the bays, for one thing, and I think within the standard stadium, like when it started off, and I was actually watching some old WBL videos, and you could see from the first generations, from the Burst generation, it was great. Like the stadium was huge, and you go in there and you play, and the game was really fun, and it's still really fun now. But the bays are twice the size.
The bays are it's like a fist size for the bays in the stadium.
Yeah, it's crazy, and just with the Papa Bay video, what he was talking about, it's with the KOs and things like that. It's kind of like 50-50. It's not a matter of you can get attack to do KOs, but stamina can also do the same thing depending on what type of driver that you have it on. Because of just the size of the base. So that's one thing that I've seen as far as the evolution when it comes to parts. I think the recent releases, but I think that's more because of his DB is very, very, very stamina based. But I think the game overall is stamina based.
I think it's probably a mix of the two because the low center of gravity too. It's it makes attack a lot harder for them to actually market because. For starters, they have to make it fast, and they actually have to make it do stuff. And that's also, before Crisis answers, I even forgot to say this, but we were talking about guilty for parts or whatever, but if you've noticed, a lot of times the drivers that are picked or chosen are very much designed for the DB stadium. That's why you barely, Ultimate Valkyrie had a variable dash, but I'm talking about, for pretty much the new stuff, even Venture, right? Venture technically, but it's mostly just because it's accelerating on the ridge. Even Adventure, right? Nothing is really like the rubber, and they're designing it specific because they know. Because they even look at Phoenix. Phoenix, they could have done whatever, but why did they pick Metal Universe? Because Universe is a stadium that works really. Universe is a driver.
Yeah, I know what you're trying to say.
Universe is a driver that works really well in the stadium.
Yeah.
I had a stroke there.
Yeah. It's all good. It's all good. All right, I'm good, Mike. Because I figured you would have something more in depth because you're more of a tester than I am.
Well, so I started for Burst. I started at the end of GT early sparking, and I was able to see the transition from GT to sparking wasn't that fast, but then the transition from sparking to dynamite was super short. I think the third release in, and you no longer cared about sparking bays anymore. You're get these things out of here. They do nothing. So the evolution of Beyblade since I've started playing has definitely grown more into there's more technical things to look into because you've got the center of gravity that changes with the dynamite bays. You've got the weight entirely that changes, and then you've got all this rubber on these Beyblades, and then half of them are circles. The the majority of them are just turning into circles, so everything is focusing more on stamina. Granted,
Variations of
this
it,
is this is a game about spinning tops. Spinning tops for hundreds of years has been about who just spins the longest.
It was the better circle, exactly.
Right. So, but on the other part too, the game isn't just evolving in the sense of that; it's also evolving in the sense of the WBO.
Right.
Because just the start of this year, we've started 3v3 and pick 3, choose 1, and I think that has been some of the most one of the best things that I've seen the WBO do since I started at the beginning of Sparking. Like it opened up so much more for people to be more creative with combos as well, because they have to think differently.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like single play where it's like, well, I'm just going to go with this one safe combo because I kind of have to. Like, if I don't go with a safe combo, I'm probably just going to get smorked by something. And then it's like, okay, well, now here's 3v3. Oh, cool. Well, I don't know what I'm going to go against now, ever. Like, sure, they could run. There's one extremely safe combo. They're going to run that. Sure. I don't know when I'm going to run into it. So, you know, I got to try other stuff that might possibly beat it. And then that promotes people to also try new things. You know, like I never really used attack types, and now here I am almost every night sitting at my desk practicing with Jolt Dash and Extreme Dash and everything like that. So,
and I think also what's interesting is that I'm pretty sure every time, most of the time whenever they start new, pretty much everything before it will get outclassed. Like very rarely will something stay along for the ride. Like when we got to God, what was probably like a dual, like probably like Lost Longinus or something, right? Or like for Chozi to GT, like Perfect Phoenix, Archer Hercules, even though niche Hell Salamander, right? But the issue with how Burst is, and not even Burst, how Beyblade is that no matter what, I mean, well, I don't know about, Plastic Gen is different, right? Because plastics are, I think, more well balanced than how it is. But for at least MFB and Burst, how the game is designed is that as they keep going on, they have to make it heavier. They have to get more and more heavier, and eventually it gets to the point where they'll run out of stuff. And the biggest contributing factor to Burst has been sales. That is why it keeps on going on. If you told me that it would have died in I would have believed you. I would have believed you because we could have thought of like for Zero G, even though I love MFB to my heart and I'll probably prefer it over Burst, even if I do way better in Burst than I do in MFB, right? There are a lot of factors that go into it, and I think Burst has been very smart overall. For an example, let's contrast MFB to Burst real quickly. So let's look at the random boosters, right? Look at how many random boosters it took for them to actually be full-on recolors. Not like what I'm talking about that. So for context, the MFB random boosters, like the recolors like for all the parts, but like the face bolt and like the stickers were like the stock or whatever, right? Or at least the face bolt I remember was like the stock colors, and they only really got into it like 40, whatever, right? But more important than that is how like stingy they were with reprints. Like, if you look at Burst random boosters, they're kind of like a godsend to what Metal Fight did, because in Zero G, there was such a lack of reprint for stuff. Like, look at some of the top parts like F230, or even some 40 bottoms like Bearing Drive or whatever. Or, like, stuff that get, like, one release, and that is really bad. And even if, whatever, like, Burst don't like Burst, like, Burst does that job well. Like, look at Infinite Achilles. You didn't get it the first time around? Okay, here's this cool black recolor of it. You didn't get whatever you didn't. Well, I'm trying to think. Okay, granted, there are some parts that are specifically locked to sets, but they have to do it, right? That's how they sell, right?
Yes.
Like for an example, what is it? Metal Drift, right? You gotta put it. You gotta sell. You gotta pull it in a set, right? Or even like for random booster stuff, yeah, maybe sometimes the prize base is gonna have like that or whatever. Maybe it's only gonna be until a few random boosters, but I like how they handle the Burst. I just hope to stand off with, right, that they're not even the drivers, just the discs. Like our last disc was Legacy. And even
our last disc was go ahead.
Legacy was like the last new disc, right? And so, okay, now for whatever reason, Chain Kerbeus comes out as a new disc. Awesome, but I don't want to see them recycle stuff, because if they recycle stuff, you're going to have the issue where, too, it's not just the issue of reprint, it's now going to be the issue of, well, it's like, oh, Metal Venture, oh, well, now it's Metal Quest,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, eventually, like, even for me, like, I have a certain line, right? Right now, they're doing okay. I don't look at Divine, right? Divine, I'll pretend they didn't release it and change the first B release, because
Yeah.
Well, I look at Divine as like the bridge between
that's
the
what
two.
I see. It's
But
supposed to be
you
like
know
the
what?
segue, right? Because they're trying to sell the
Yeah.
gears, right? And obviously, too, it makes sense marketing wise. They're like, what are we gonna do?
I know the Vaughn is like trash, and there's no way I'm not comparing it in any way to Dynamite. But Dynamite, well, no, I take that back, because Dynamite was still pretty decent even when it came out. But that was compared to Sparking.
Eh,
But when it
not-
came out, it was very lightweight and it was trash. And I'm not saying Devon is going to be good, but I guess it's just in my mind. I have wishful or hopeful thinking that the new releases will be great, or will progress. And I agree with what you said as far as like I do want to see new parts, because that's going to. I'm not thinking for right now. I'm thinking when they stop releasing, so we could have. Hopefully, it's not several years, but if we had a year or two that we can play and experiment and test with these new parts for the next year that they're releasing them, and we'll have like some time to do that. I would enjoy that. I don't want to see a whole lot of different of the same parts just coming out with like metal drivers. I hope they don't do
Yeah, well, I think it's a good note to leave off with. Then, all right.
I'm
that.
I'm just so scared about Chain because I already see the 6 armor.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. And for the most though, it'll all work out, man. Like
Right.
either way, we're gonna all still keep Beyblading and moving on. Was you about to say something, Mike?
Yeah, one quick thing. All right, so Zanky, so I'm sure you realize that marketing wise and everything for Burst has been like a lot higher than Metal Fighter Plastic. Like they've made a lot more money off of this series than they have the previous two. Do you do you think that it's wise for them to end Burst, or do you think they're only ending Burst
That's why.
to end up starting something
That's
new?
why B is a thing. That's why also they're doing Bay ambassadors and everything. They're trying to.
Okay.
If you read the financial sales report, you'll notice every single time it will say it's on a decline, but it's still doing better than projected. So what it means is that it's going down, but what they're estimating, it's still selling pretty well. So for all I know, this goes on another 5 years. Like it goes on as long as it keeps on selling. I don't think there'll ever be, like, imagine this. Okay, imagine that they just keep on doing Bay ambassadors and they just do like collabs, like how Fortnite has collabs or something. Maybe it just keeps on going. So, but what I do think too is that I don't think that Hasbro has a very good market, and not because I don't like Hasbro, because a lot of kids are growing up, and it's like not much appeal. Because another big change too is that whole thing with Kappa and the Made for Kids thing. So they don't have the same reach as they. And okay, they give context. Kappa, whatever, was like this thing where YouTube did something they shouldn't, and basically they'll mark any kids' videos, whatever, right? And because they do that, the market for Hasbro is a lot tougher. So that's why you see the Bay team, because on the main channel, they're not going to pull the same views as they would if pre-Kappa, whatever. That's also why you see, for an example, other influencers doing a lot of mini ads on TikTok or Instagram, right? Because for them, they know that it's going to be rough. And I would not be surprised if Hasbro does like a Season 7 anime, because you got to remember too that in North America, it's a big reliance on the animation. I would argue it's way popular than it probably would be in Japan for players, right?
Yeah, the anime is the commercial here.
So if you think about it, like if there's no anime, I think Hasbro's dead. That's it. No, if you think about it, they probably could, but I do think that they just keep on going on. And I don't even like for the collabs that we had so far. One of them I think was stickers. The Hello Kitty one. There's confusion. There was a collab video. That's not the Bay. There's supposed to be an actual release, and I'm all here for it because it's like a cool thing, and it could also help people from other fandoms maybe come into it. And I think just to end off, what I'm just hoping is that it ends on a good note. I feel every single time a Beyblade generation has ended, it has always ended because they screwed it up. They didn't end on their own terms. Plastic to HMS was so different from plastics. That's what happened. If you look at Metal Fight, unfortunately, with how Zero G was, other than maybe small factors, whatever, such a big difference from the 4D system, right? With Burst, I feel it's been very steady with what they've been doing. So I just like it to be like, hey, this is the final release, whatever. That's it. We're done. Maybe they do like, hey, maybe they do more remakes or something of the older stuff. That'd be cool.
Do you hope they just stick with a DB system like from
Yes.
here on out, no matter
Yes.
what? Like they never change it?
Reason-
I agree.
Because what happens is that if you have to make a new system, you have to make it better than the previous system. Otherwise, then why are you doing it?
Right. And at this point here now, if they're not doing
Which
an
is also
anime anymore,
it was also why I don't get the complaints for BU. Oh, it's not new. Why do you want it new? Because then you'll just complain that it's a power creep again.
yeah, I didn't want it new. I wanted it to be DB2.
But yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks both of y'all. Yeah, thank you, Mike. Always getting up here with me. Thank you, Zenki, for joining us today, man.
Yeah, thank you.
A lot of great information, man. A lot of great information. I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone that listened. We appreciate it. I'm gonna put Zenki's YouTube in the bottom, but I mean,
Very small channel.
it's really
Very small
I
channel,
mean,
guys. I appreciate any support. I'm trying to get 2 likes now.
yeah, he's definitely way bigger than this channel is. But appreciate you coming. Also, you could. Oh, I appreciate it. And be sure also, if you didn't know, you can also check out his store. It is Canada based, right?
Okay, all right. I didn't know. Okay, listen, I didn't know what plugs I can do. I was okay. You want?
No, you're good. You're good.
Right.
Because it's about
fair enough.
It's about increasing the community. You know, yeah. You can shop with us if we don't have it. You could shop at their store, vice versa, or anything like that. Whatever benefits the community, I'm all for it.
Shopify store, whatever.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we have bundles, deals, whatever. We are Canada based, right? Make sure to check the currency on the bottom. I feel like every time I've mentioned this, they say, "Oh, wait, there's currency at the bottom you can change." Because they'll be like the Canadian price, but they're in the U.S. and then they see it and they're like, "Wait a minute, it's crazy."
Yeah.
But
it's all good.
yeah, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'm sure more interviews in the Bay community. So make sure to check it out or other episodes.
Yes. Thank you all so much. Keep blading hard and take care.
Bye.